Good afternoon, all. Gabriel Philip, good afternoon. Daniela Williams, good afternoon to you. Point Kumana Sharon, blessed Sunday to you as well. Shadley Jimenez, good afternoon. Margaret Muta, good afternoon. Thank you so much. Brenda Isaac, no problem, Brenda. I don't know why some people don't get a notification. I'll have to check into that. Althea, Heather Walters, Michelle Nero, Deborah Durante, Arlene Lewis, good afternoon. Sarah Richards, Lynette Beans, Cheryl Seeley, Neil Francois, always present. Good afternoon to His Excellency, President of Pleasantville, Nigel O'Connor, Rukman Gangadinai Rukman, Kathy Ann Best, Wazid, greetings. Right, so I had one of my engagements for today was postponed, fortunately or unfortunately, depends on which angle you're looking at. So I was able to, so I got a little time today to jump on for just a bit because I have another event to attend this afternoon. The opening of a food court in my constituency. So I was asked to attend as MP. See, Alison Rogers, David P1H60, Vicky Ann, Winston Jones, Angela Carty, greetings. Right, so let me just jump into it one time. Let me also say good afternoon to Jenny and Mr. Chance. Continue to do human service. So, yesterday was Indian Arrival Day, as we all aware. And, well, we saw the government would have, well, they did the most yesterday to commemorate Indian Arrival Day. Nothing wrong with that. But, they love to say that we in the PNM always blowing the racial dog whistle. It has nothing to do with that. But it was not lost on me, and I'm sure many others, the extravagancies in which the government engaged yesterday. One would have thought that this was the very first celebration of Indian Arrival Day in this country, because last year, when Indian Arrival Day came around, they were in government, right? They were 1 month into government, and certainly they didn't have all of the fanfare and so on that they had this year. And I don't think we have seen this administration, put out for any other event, any other holiday, as they did yesterday. But, you could read into that what you will. What was of concern to me is some of the expenditures that were quite apparent. So we saw where the Prime Minister decided to do a reenactment of the arrival of the Fata Al Razak, where they had two fishing boats somewhere down in south, I think it was, and they did a reenactment of the landing. So she was in the boat, I think, in front with the Indian High Commissioner, also I believe the Chief of Defense Staff, Captain Polo, and others. And wherever where it is they landed and where she had to come out, you could have seen money was spent to build that jetty and that walkway and so on, just for one day, to sell for one, well, to papi show people, essentially. And whenever I see things like this, I can't help but cast my mind to what is happening in the country, in particular with people who continue to struggle on a daily basis, just to make ends meet, who don't have money. This is a government that is owing everybody and the dog, right? You have, they told us how was it, $16 million also was spent on the Flavor Village. I think it was something to that effect. And you are still owing people. You have people who are working on this N POPs, the National Program for the Upkeep of Public Spaces, or an acronym as the political leader of the PNM would have changed it to no pay, unkept promises, and suffering. I think that's a very good and very accurate definition of that program, because you have people who are still paid from the previous cycle, persons who are paid who are owed for the current cycle, and you're not paying them, but you could find money for all of these extravagancies that we saw yesterday. We also saw several MPs, several government ministers hosting events in their constituencies as well, and it was no small event. Seeing money spent, put up big stage and hire artists and the like, and food galore, and you name it, right? And these things cost money. For 10 years, these people were in opposition. 10 years. And they didn't do these things. They didn't have, well, we assume they didn't have the money to host these lavish events. And they didn't say yesterday, well, let's just have one big event in one space so we could fool the people, right? And say one expenditure. The Prime Minister had her own thing. They had some corridor climb and the like. And then in individual constituencies, UNC constituencies, you had MPs having their own separate events. How were these things paid for? The question must be asked. Did they use government money? Or is it a case that, well, now that they are in government and their financiers have ways and means by which they could spend money to host events like these and recoup their monies through receiving contracts, state contracts, and so on. So we spend. The MPs need to spend money. Bread and circuses, that's what it is. But they have avenues and ways and means. I don't know how these things were funded. And I'm pretty sure none of these MPs will come out and say, this is how much it cost, and this is where the money came from. I paid for it from my salary or whatever it is. Very unlikely that they would do that, right? So it's a real possibility. And so they're coming up with creative ways and means to be able to still continue to campaign, to get their financiers to fund it. And the financiers are being reimbursed, right? But of course, their supporters will see nothing wrong with it. And if people like myself, we talk about these things, they'll come and say, oh, it's a good thing, and they're racial, and they're against East Indians. This has nothing to do with us being against East Indians, right? Nothing, absolutely nothing. If you all want to celebrate in however you choose to, no problem. But what the government needs to be wary of is that when you set this paradigm, is that when other public holidays come around, whether it's religious or otherwise, that are affiliated with other religions and persons of other ethnicities, and we don't see the same level of patronage from the state, you will open yourself up for that type of criticism. Right? So we wait to see. What is it next? So that was East Indian Arrival Day. The next event we have is what? Emancipation. So we'll see what happens for emancipation. And thereafter, we have independence. And people are asking the question. Imagine this is where we have reached, where the citizens have to be asking, are we going to have an Independence Day parade this year? From it being a regular staple on the Trinidad and Tobago events calendar, right? People look forward to that every year. August 31st, you could mark that on the calendar. We know we're going down to the Savannah, we're going to the Independence Day parade. There was none last year, and people are unsure if we're having one this year. I am sure that members of the government are fully aware that people are asking this question. Yet nobody has come out to say, yes, there is going to be an Independence Day parade. And I don't know if it is that this government just likes to leave the country in suspense. They just like the couture, they like the bacchanal, It's not too early. Just come out and say, people are asking the question in light of the fact that the state of emergency is going to come to an end sometime around the 12th of next month. And by all indications, there is an expectation that it may be extended for another 3 months, because the government still does not have an anti-crime plan. And again, the Prime Minister has said quite recently that she has no problem in extending it for another 3 months, because really she couldn't care less what you all think. Or they can vex all they want. She doesn't care. Right? And I am convinced that Mrs. Prasad Bisesa is well aware that a second term or third term as Prime Minister really is not in the cards for her. Not necessarily because, because the population fed up, which they are, but more because I don't think she has it in her physically, health-wise. You see, Mrs. Prasad Bisesa is going down, but I don't wish anything bad on her. Who knows? But anybody who tried to fool herself to think that even if she were to offer herself that she could go, because she'll be what, 70, 77, 78, thereabouts in 2030, to go till 83. Well, miracles do happen, so we will see what happens there. So now, come on, I'll lose this thing. Right. So we saw also last week where a couple of activists were arrested, and they were eventually charged under the SOE regulations, and I think at least 2 of them are out on bond, $40,000 or I think $40,000 bond. One Jason X and Miss Phillip. I think Miss Phillip's mother might have been arrested too and charged. But I did hear her in an interview, a brief interview, stating the conditions under which they were detained, where they were taken to a police station and they had to sleep on the bare, cold floor without charges being proffered. And they were told by the police, well, we're going easy on all here, but we could have taken this down a different road. We could have detained you all under preventative detention orders, and you all would have remained inside for the rest of the duration of this state of emergency, which would be for about 2 weeks. Right? Just because one comes out to exercise their civic duty, their constitutional rights, to be able to speak out against the state if they so choose. But for what's interesting? For 10 years under the PNM, the supporters of the UNC, we were hearing them liberally using terms like dictatorship, and we're living in a communist country under Rowley, and they only want they're trampling on people's constitutional rights. So 10 years we kept hearing that, 10 years. And nothing comparative to what we have seen over the last 13 months would have taken place between September 2015 to April 2025. Nothing of the sort. But the same people who were complaining about dictatorship and Rowley is a dictator are seeing on a daily basis citizens' rights being trampled on. And these same people are trying to defend that, coming up with some of the most ridiculous, asinine excuses to defend. Them thing only happening in PNM constituencies, and all these people is PNM, led by their leader, their dear leader, right? Who's quick to accuse the PNM of trying to incite the population against law enforcement. And as I had to point out on Thursday at the public meeting, the hypocrisy of Mrs. Prasad Bisesa, that to make such a claim that the PNM is using this issue with Kaya Seeley and Joshua Samaru to incite the population to rally against law enforcement, when we did nothing of the sort, and that we are making out law enforcement to be, criminals and so on. This is the same moment, as I said on Thursday, 2022, when the Trinidad and Tobago Coast Guard, in the execution of their duties, opened fire on an unidentified fishing vessel, and in the course of that endeavor, a 2-year-old Venezuelan child was shot and killed. And before there was even an investigation, before the investigation even began, Mrs. Prasad Bisesa labeled the Coast Guard officers as murderers. She had no facts. She had no information, just the bare skeletal details of the incident, and that was sufficient for her as senior counsel, someone who is supposed to uphold the tenets of innocent until proven guilty, someone who is supposed to be a defender of natural justice, wasted no time in labeling the Coast Guard officers as murderers because she probably felt that that was the populist thing to do. A 2-year-old child was killed, and we know and how the population will feel. These wicked Coast Guard officers. And let me jump out myself. She was the only person to label the Coast Guard officers as murderers. Right? Then we would have seen again during the term of the PNM when licensing officers and the police officers were doing their jobs, trying to maintain law and order on the nation's roads, trying to prevent Trinidad and Tobago from descending into a lawless dump, as she labeled it. And in the execution of their duties, again, being populist as she is, said that they were wicked and oppressive, oppressing the population, oppressing the poor. So that wasn't trying, that type of language, inflammatory language, wasn't inciting persons against these officials in the execution of their duties, because hey, the prime minister in waiting said so. So all wicked, like I'm not saying all wicked, all oppressing people. Can't wait to get rid of Rowley. Or he come like deal with all here. Right. That's what we saw the other day where the Maximan in QREP got into the altercation with the licensing officers. But that is the hypocrisy of the woman, right? Not surprised. But when one looks at the order that was put out by the police service, indicating to the population the areas that are now, well, if we want to say banned, or areas that where you can no longer protest within 500 feet or 500 meters or so, 500 feet, I think it is. The parliament, a place that the UNC for 10 years loved to bring their supporters to boo then Prime Minister Keith Rowley and to boo members of the government. Yeah, and they protest when they came out with the placards and so on. The current mayor of Siparia, Dudnat Meru, when he came with his papier-mâché kangaroo head, mocking the name of the current president, calling her, instead of Christine, well, he got that originally from Anil Roberts when he was a senator, an opposition senator, and he had to be hauled before the parliament, before the privileges committee, right? For going on doubles and coffee or douglas politics and railing against the president and talking about a story about a planet called Senator and a dictator by the name of Kangaroo and so on, right? A play on the president's last name of Kangaroo. But that was their domain. Coming in Woodford Square, I recall on the 23rd of May last year when the parliament was opened. First day, the ceremonial opening, and their supporters were across the road. And Brian Manning and I arrived for the ceremony to take our oath. I never forget, we walking, minding our business, and UNC supporters, "Ole shame, watch all your PNM, watch all your shame on all shame," and hurling abuses. We didn't take them on. Yeah, go so all that dirty stinking PNM. Yeah, that's what we had to put up with from their supporters. But now they're telling you, hey, because they know there's no reason for their supporters to come to the parliament to protest, because they could do whatever they want and they will make excuses for it. Just like when Up North made the statement, he could walk out on Fifth Avenue and shoot somebody point blank and he wouldn't lose a single vote because he knows the loyalty of his supporters. And Mrs. Prasad-Bissessar could do the same thing. She could say what she wants. She could come out and go on a platform and say, every UNC member is stupid. Every UNC member is an idiot. And you know what they will say? Kamla is like stupid. They will laugh. Gosh, that Kamla. They'll make an excuse, a convenient excuse for that, and probably find some way to blame the PNM. Find some way to blame the PNM. She could do that. Cult of personality. So, but one must ask the question, why some people are asking, some of the places, the Ministry of Education, Why are people banned from protesting in the vicinity of the Ministry of Education? The Ministry of Finance? The Ministry of Finance? Why? We know why. Education. The teachers' union has been advocating for the pay raise for the longest while. And TAXCU keeps dancing them. All right? Keeps dancing them around. So we know that perhaps some sort of protest action might be coming soon against the Ministry of Education. And by extension, the Ministry of Finance, because we have seen in the last couple of months or so where representatives of the teachers union have had small protests just outside of the Ministry of Finance. But then we have public servants who gave their vote based on the promise of 10%. And they get a 10%, but we know the focus when we hear about 10%, really, the focus isn't really so much on the pay raise as it is the back pay. People looking forward to this back pay, all who say, well, who have debts to pay off, who want to purchase a new car, who want to do some repairs on their house, who want to take a vacation. So people's focus was on the back pay, right? Yes, we appreciate the pay raise, but when one looks at the quantum of that pay raise, depending on what your salary bracket is, it's really not that much. It'll fill a hole, but then when you see that the government take back a piece of it in NIS and other things, and they increase the price of certain things, so really that increase is negligible. So it's really the back pay we want. And now you're being told 60-40, TAXCU say 60-40 is the final, right? 60-40, 60% in non-cash and you get 40% in cash. And that's it. And they give you a whole set of options as to what that 60% could represent. If you want it in time off, they could probably pay off. If you have student loans, they could probably pay off that. A whole set of different things they want to offer you, things that the population, that the public servants don't want. And the reality is they didn't tell you all this during the election because they know you all would have said, no, we don't want that. We want 100% cash, cold hard cash. We don't want no non-cash, and telling us you'll pay it out to us over a period of years. When you all spoke on the campaign trail, you spoke of immediacy. Put us in office, and in the first year we given all your first budget read 10% and again your back pay. Now they come and say, well, they're already in office, so listen, at the end of this 5 years, we'll teeth enough so that if we lose, worst case scenario, a few of us will still be in the parliament, so we will still continue to receive our parliamentary salaries. And that could just fill a hole, but the amount that we will teeth between now and the next election, we got to go. Plenty of the never see come sees who never thought, suffering from never thought that they would have ended up in parliament. Right? They are there today and feathering their nests. All who telling their friends, family, and finances, go and open a company, and they'll get contracts. Don't worry, we'll make it happen. And so we see a whole set of companies now being registered within the last 12 months, priming themselves to receive contracts. I told you all, 129 projects under this National Revitalization Program. Where that come from? Nobody knows. No mention was made of that for the 10 years they were in opposition. They came to us in 2020 with the National Economic Transformation Plan, which was their manifesto for the 2020 general election. There was no mention of that. We went through a whole election campaign, no mention of that. They had their manifestos and so on, no mention of that. All the Monday Night Forum meeting after Monday Night Forum meeting, no mention of any National Revitalization Program containing 129 projects, no mention of that. Where that came from? For 10 years, they couldn't come up with something like that. But 6 months into government, they had this bright idea, not 10 projects, not 20, not 30, not 40 projects, 129 projects. How do you conceptualize 129 projects in 6 months? Who was responsible for that? Was a cabinet subcommittee set up to look into that and to come up with these ideas? Where did it come from? The question must be asked. In a 6-month time frame, 129 projects, infrastructural projects, conceptualized, put into an AI slideshow and presented to prospective investors. And as I said on Thursday, I see this for what it is. It is an attempt to, one, give state land to preferred contractors, preferred financiers, right? The biggest land grab you'll probably see in this country's history, and get them to come and build stuff. So basically, is the state giving them land to build their own business, because the state gets no benefit out of these infrastructural projects. So when you provide the land, and they say, well, okay, so let's say, for example, in Venus Bay. So you provide the land, you're the state. And you get one of your preferred contractors to come and build, I don't know, a hotel or something like that. How does the state benefit from that? Other than when the hotel makes money, they pay taxes. But the land, the prime real estate, how does the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago benefit from that? That's the question we want to know. You want to shut down Carrera Island, the prison, the Carrera prison. It's not the first time. We heard that between 2010 to 2015. We heard, yeah, we're going to close down the Carrera prison, and we're going to remove all the prisoners from there, and we're going to put them in the maximum security prison at Golden Grove. And in preparation for that, we're going to put up this big fence. For those of you who live in the East or frequent the East, and you know that fence outside the prison, that big fence that only garden bush. You have at either end of the fence, you have a little hut, a guard hut, I assume, and the only thing inside there is bush for years. But they spent, I think, between $88 and $100 million to put up that fence that has no nexus with the prison whatsoever, right? Because if you drive up inside there, you will see there is a big space, a car park, in fact, between where the fence ends and where the prison building begins. So what was the purpose of that? But they told us that was part of the relocation. Today, Carrera prison still exists. 5 years, 3 months, and 14 days. They were in office. They told us that they were going to close down the prison on Frederick Street, and they were going to build a hotel over the prison. All these grandiose ideas, 2010 to 2015. Right? Now we're telling us they're going to shut down the Carrera prison, and it's going to be turned into a boutique hotel. A boutique hotel. Okay. Who built that? Who got the land for that? And whose idea, whose brilliant idea was that? You all sit down in cabinet. Okay, the idea don't exist. You had your first cabinet meeting, your second. Somebody just say, hey, I have a bright idea. Why can't we let's have a national revitalization program, and we will offer 129 infrastructure projects? Which minister came with that? So these are things, but most likely someone of the financiers had in mind, had in train all the while. And they saw the opportunities. They learned from the last time that they were in office. When citizens marched from Chagaramas to the waterfront in protest, but prime real estate belonging to the government of Trinidad and Tobago, by extension, you, the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago, was given away to select citizens belonging to a particular group that UNC loved then, they hated between 2015 to 2025, and today they are now back in love with them. Right? Acres and acres of prime real estate given away at peppercorn rates. And they realized, well, hey, we need to come up with a more strategic way to do it this time, where we retain control of the land, so we fool the population, because we're not just giving and telling a man, here, look, 4 acres for $1 a year for 30 years. Build a car park and then lease it to the CDA for $900,000 a month, whether the car park making money or not. No. We're not going to go down the road that we did last time. Look, 35 acres, build a water park. $3,800 a month. Don't mind that the state valuator say it should be $500,000 a month. You pay $3,800 a month. Yeah, look how much acres of land, build a petting zoo. Here, look 100 acres to plant onion for export. Where you could put up a restaurant on it if you want to, and you could pave a car park, and you could lease out the car park to certain people to house their equipment and so on, their heavy duty equipment. You could do that. And you could pave another piece, and you could use it to host carnival fetes and all of these different things. Yeah? So now, can't do that. So we come up with a different plan. The state retains the land. We will provide it to the developer. They will come and build whatever it is. And then we say, well, if they're building houses, when the houses are sold, we will get a share of the value of the land. You get a share of the value of the land, present value, right? But what happens in the future when the value of that land goes up as a result of further developments taking place within the vicinity of these housing developments? Who benefits? And I don't believe for one moment That they're just building this thing and, well, we hope for the best and we hope that people will come and buy. They already have buyers. No investor comes with $100+ million and say, let me just build a house and hope for the best, fingers crossed, and hope that people will want to come and purchase it. Rubbish. Nonsense. They done marketing this thing a long time and have buyers lined up. Whether it is people that want to purchase it to live in it, or if they want to purchase it to rent it out, as the case may be, but they already have their buyers. And fooling you and tell you, well, you could get on the priority list now, pre-construction, you pay one price and then afterwards you pay a different price. But no taxpayers' money would be spent on this. Rubbish. Garbage. Forget taxpayers' money, it's taxpayers' property. Who did you consult with to come up with this brilliant idea to take state land to build a house for the rich? But people being fooled by that. The supporters, I don't know. They beyond hope. So it's a waste of time trying to educate them. Right? But they have put restrictions on where you can now protest. So people who vex with the opposition, all they ain't doing enough, and it's time for us to hit the streets, and all they need to organize a protest. For what? To do what? To organize a protest for you all to come out there, for the police to come and drop tear gas and pull out their baton and beat a few of you all and throw you in the Maria and take you down and say they're going to lock you all up under the preventative detention order, right? And then they come on the 12th of next month or whatever it is, or the 11th of next month, and decide that they're going to extend the state of emergency for another 3 months. And then some of you all end up inside for 2 months and 2.5 months and vex with us and say that we should know better. And we come to organize protests and cause all that to get locked up and get licks and so on. And then blame all the opposition inciting civil disobedience. No, we should not have been here. We told you all this was going to happen. But you know what some of you all said? The PNM fear-mongering. They're just trying to frighten the people to think, if the UNC come in power, they will do this and that. But not this time. All you ain't fooling with PNM. No. Not this time. Rowley must go. PNM must go. We fed up all you need that. That's what you all were saying. We fear-mongering. Everything Stuart told you all would have happened thus far has happened. He told you they were going to shut down CPEP. He told you they were going to shut down URP. Italia Forestry. He told you all they were coming after HGC and WASA. All those things have come to pass in less than a year. But when he was telling you, when Dr. Rowley was telling you, they're fear-mongering, they're just trying to frighten people, telling the CPEP workers, don't worry, all you're going to lose all your job. But I would Stuart Chung and them on stupidness, they're just trying to frighten all you. Not this time. Some of you same CPEP workers was cussing PNM, Rowley this and Rowley that, PNM this and PNM that. Sign your own occupational death warrants. So for the last almost 1 year, some of you all have no work, struggling to get employment. You all did that to yourselves. We didn't do that. We tried to help. All right? We tried to extend the contracts for the CPEP workers so that you all would have had jobs until, but this is a period of time for the majority of this government's tenure. And they came in and talked about corruption. Almost a year later, not a man get locked up, not a man charged, not a man questioned by the police. But they come to tell you, oh yes, corruption, all them contractors and them, corruption. That done. They pelt out $7 million to keep the CPEP company running so that they could wind up. Meanwhile, there is no CPEP in place, but they have a board in place that every month the directors of the board are receiving their director's stipend, right? For doing what? Absolutely nothing. But they get paid every month. And you, who are the former CPEP worker, getting nothing. Salt. You just looking out to hear when the next batch of food card shared so that you could come by the MP. Not making any sense? But the PNM was the worst thing. They're oppressive and they're wicked and they're oppressing the poor. And the same idiots who for 10 years was singing that song, the PNM wicked, they don't like black people and they're oppressing the poor. You know what? More oppression under this administration. And those who were the defenders, who were defending you, the poor, and they're so concerned about poor people and nothing for the poor under the PNM. Today, where are they? You who suffering for the last year, where are they to come and defend you now and to call out this oppressive and wicked government? They're nowhere. They are. You know where they are? They're in Boissa, making 4 and 5 times and 6 times what you were earning in CPEP. Right? So they did their piece. They got $40,000 during the general election upfront, and then they were rewarded afterwards with lucrative jobs, earning between almost $9,000 and $12,500 per month to do nothing other than to sit down in front of a phone screen or a computer screen every day and cuss the PNM. Or do videos and post up cussing the PNM still. PNM out of office 13 months now. You ain't sure? But we saw the Mark Boss last week. And a few of them decided to come out to defend themselves. So yeah, they're working hard for the money. What they're doing there is what they qualified for. Who painting pipe and who cutting grass and who maintaining the pump station and all of these different things. And who will just shameless. They're not even going to bother to tell you what they do. But I think it's a PNM, all they pat down now. They don't care about all your own, and it's all your own fighting on all your own. Meanwhile, that individual eat a food, drink a juice, and belch under the PNM, and Patrick Manning was there. This individual knows how to survive whichever administration is in office. Right? Under the last administration, they love Penny too bad. That's my girl. Working HDC. That's my girl. All the thing, don't come for Penny, and when all they come for Penny, all they come for me. No, today, she has the worst to say about Penny. Penny ain't ready, and Penny this and Penny that. And if election come 2030 and we win, and Penny's prime minister, she come and the same Penny. Yeah, that's my girl, Penny, and all that. These hustlers who know, professional hustlers, they know how to survive. They know. Right? So they benefited, right? They benefited. Whether they're on 91.1, whether they're sitting on a state board on TTT, or they're sitting on a state board on the board of Queen's Hall, or whatever other board they get put on, or they get a job. My job in Wassa, or wherever else they get in jobs. They're good. They're good. As I said, they're making between 4 and 6 times what you were earning. But you take chain up from them to sign away your occupational debt warrant. You take chain up. You feel like care about you now? Where are they to come out in defense and call upon the government and say, all they're doing rubbish? The people didn't vote for this. Where are they? Nothing to say. Because they're bread buttered on both sides, and they have jam, and they have cheese, and they have bacon, and everything else. And they couldn't give 2 hoots about you. How your bills paying, how your children going to school. If you have a meal to eat, they couldn't care. That's not their business. Because in their house, they have a salary coming every month. They could afford to go to the bank and get a loan to buy a car and whatever else they want to. They say that 6 months, it's just a 6 months contract. Rubbish. Rubbish. At least one of those influencers, Miss Ringbell, has been there for more than 6 months. More than 6 months. So if you want to buy this rubbish, well, it's just a 6 months thing that they get. And yeah, you hold on to that. Because more than 6 months, we only just found out, but do we know on what date some of them were hired? You really feel like giving them just a 6 months? If the work that they're doing is so critical and so crucial, why would they only give them for 6 months? So what happens at the end of the 6 months? All the work that they're doing just stop. The need for it doesn't exist anymore. Some of their supporters buying that. Well, most of them buying that folly. Some of them a little upset because they're looking for work. They're among those who lost their jobs. And they feel, they were unfairly treated because while they were out in the vineyard and out in the trenches, laboring for the UNC, some of these grifters who are today enjoying the spoils, where were they for 10 years? They only came on the scene, most of them, a month, 2 months before the election. Yeah, a month or 2 before the election. They call them, as we were told by Rambles, they set up I forget what it's called, but some chat right? Some chat they set up and they invited all of these so-called, I wouldn't even call them influencers. They're personalities because they can't influence me. Right? Can't influence, well, they could probably influence the Foley Dance. Doesn't take much to influence them. Right? And they bring all of these people together and they pitch an idea to them, depending on how many followers you have. This is how much you will get on a daily basis. If you could reach this amount of persons, this is what you would get. This is how much you will get. Right. The more followers you have, is the more money you could negotiate for. People jump out themselves. All who was never political before, all of a sudden, they realize Trinidad and Tobago in a mess and the government is the worst. And they come out, collect their 40 or whatever it is they get. And when they thought perhaps that was the end of it, I don't even think some of them believed the UNC was going to win the election anyway. So, may eat our food. Well, the UNC won, and there was more to come. Right? So now they got dinner, now they get a dessert. Liking themselves. So, here's where we are. Never a dull moment in TNT. But we see some people who defended them. Some of them seem to have had a change of heart. So I saw Trinidad Killer a couple days ago did a video. Trinidad Killer, who now resides in the United States of America. He did a Instagram live talking about the situation with Kaya Seeley and Joshua Samaru and so on, and other things happening in the country. And he has indicated he's disappointed. This is the same Trinidad Killer who was seen in a video some years ago with the current Prime Minister calling Dr. Rowley a dog. Rowley, a dog. I remember that. Come down from there, Rowley. Come down from there. He sang a song, Come Down From There. Now he's saying he regrets having sang that song. He regrets the criticism of the PNM. He is now of the view that the PNM was doing a better job than this UNC government is doing. He said, yeah, Rowley do his stupidness, but the PNM was still better. This PNM was still doing a better job than the UNC. And he's sorry. And now he's a PNM. Yes, now he's pledging he's a supporter of the PNM. But you all contributed to where we are. I see Mr. Warner, Jack Warner, yes. Put out an article today. Let's see if I get it here. I was surprised when I saw that. I said, Jack, boy, what is this? Well, at least it wasn't hearsay, right? So you can't come after and say, well, that's not, I didn't see that, and I don't know where the media got that, and that was inaccurate reporting. Let's see if I get it here. Not going to read the whole thing. An opinion by Dr. Jack Austin Warner in today's Express, When the Curtain Falls, TNT's Crisis of Trust. And he says, one day we are told the economy has turned the corner. The next day the IMF arrives and in its careful diplomatic language reminds us that economic growth remains fragile. Government officials point to signs of recovery while citizens point to grocery bills, utility payments, and rising costs of living. You left out one thing there, Mr. Warner. Unemployment. You left that out. Economists debate often in language they alone understand, while ordinary people debate whether they can afford another increase in food prices or school expenses. This is the disconnect that now defines much of national life. So says Austin Jack Warner, who played a pivotal role in helping this government to come into office. Right? Going on the platform and referring to Marvin as a she and Marva and all kind of nonsense. But in just 13 months, or not yet, just 13 months, the shells or the scales seem to have fallen off of his eyes as well, among others. See if I give only a little, just a little taste more for those of you who probably didn't know. He says, today, as I sit almost fully retired from active politics, I find myself reflecting on just how accurate those words remain for Trinidad and Tobago. Age and distance have a way of sharpening perspective. Age and distance have a way of sharpening perspective. So it took Mr. Warner 84 or 85, thereabouts, for his perspective to be sharpened. right? Perspective to be sharp. I am less than half of Mr. Warner's age. And I didn't need all that age to, for my perspective to be sharpened. And I don't understand. I'm always confused. When I consider my time in the ILP, the times listening to Mr. Warner tell us about, the things that he would have experienced in the UNC. And when the ILP was formed, while the original intent of the ILP was to challenge the UNC for the Chaguanas West seat in the by-election, and where it evolved after that, and all of the information that Mr. Warner used to be providing us, those of us who on the Sunshine show, right? Sunshine Hour on 91.9, and every day Mr. Warner sending information, sending documents, talk about this, talk about that, take this angle, this is what I want you all to talk about, do this, I'm arranging an interview with this one, do that, right? When we would have our executive meetings of the ILP and so on at what was then the CONCACAF office on Edward Street, which is now, I think, the Cathedral Credit Union upstairs there, right? And listening to the passion with which Mr. Warner used to speak against the then People's Partnership, expressing to us, his concern about the things that was happening in the country. When he got access to all of these documents from the live sport, things that nobody else had, documents that Ruth Marchand provided to him, and when he had to make arrangement for Ruth Marchand to go into hiding because her life was in danger. All of these different things. And I couldn't understand for the life of me. If I had a dislike for the UNC before, it was multiplied, right? Multiplied in my time in the ILP and hearing Mr. Warner tell us about his experiences in the UNC. If I wasn't sure before that these people could not be trusted, my time in the ILP, we moved all out. So that when I saw, and I recall at the end of the election of 2015, when the UNC lost and Mr. Warner said, mission accomplished. Mission accomplished. And while perhaps that may have been his mission in using the ILP as a platform, as a vehicle to get them out of office, those of us who were doing the work on 91.9, it wasn't just, we're just doing that because we genuinely believed, based on the information that we had, that these people were no damn good, unfit for office, unfit. So that when I saw Mr. Warner go back and to the UNC, and I was particularly ashamed when in the lead up to the last general election, when they had their launch at was it general election? No, I think it may have been the local election. When they had their launch at Center of Excellence, and Mr. Warner came up with a yellow shirt, and he made the point in his speech that if you notice, I'm just wearing a plain yellow shirt, but I don't have the UNC insignia, the UNC symbol on my shirt, because I don't feel that I have yet earned the right to rejoin the UNC, right? So he's just wearing a plain yellow shirt, but the UNC insignia will come later when he feels that he has earned the right and that he has earned the forgiveness of the party and the party faithful, so that he could come back home after the contribution that you made to get rid of them in 2015, and rightly so. And many others, when I see some of them who were part of the ILP, who were talk show hosts, who would serve as guest hosts sometimes on the Sunshine Hour. There was also, the ILP also had a program on what was then Power 102. Lindira Udet at the time, she was the host of that show in the nighttime. And when I see people who were co-hosts with her and that show, and who challenged the UNC, who went up as ILP candidates in 2015, and listening to them on our various platforms tell you about all the wrongs that the UNC did and why you should never give them an opportunity to come back into office. And today, I see some of these same hypocrites posting on social media and on Facebook and criticizing the PNM and defending the nonsense under this administration. And I have to call them out. I have to call them out. I wouldn't call their names, but they know themselves. Some of them listening here, some of them hypocrites listening. But you all should be ashamed and then have the audacity and the temerity, the unmitigated gall to criticize me for going back to the PNM. As I said, I never left the PNM. I've spoken about the circumstances under which I would have affiliated myself with the ILP, right? Out of a sense of frustration at the time in 2010, wanting to assist the PNM in getting back into office. Out of that frustration, right? And the challenges that I would have encountered, and an opportunity presented itself. But as I said, the Lord works in mysterious ways, great wonders to perform. Because had I not affiliated myself with the ILP, I would never have been on radio, right? And so I'm not one to burn bridges, as they say, or to bite the proverbial hand that fed you. Right? I will always attribute my being and perhaps my current political life to the opportunity that Mr. Warner would have given me to be on radio, right? And it is from there, many of you would have encountered me for the first time. And things happen to grow from there. But listening to some of these people now defend, I cannot believe this is the same Kamla Prasad Bisasa had the worst of things to say about in 2013 when the ILP was formed, 2014, 2015. Worst of things, you know. But today, she's the best prime minister this country ever had. All your hypocrites. Me and all that. Not getting me in that, because as I always say, while the ILP was an individual party, many people used to say, the UNC used to call the ILP the PNM B team. So say, but how come all you're not criticizing the PNM on the Sunshine Hour and so on? We used to have Mr. Hines on the Sunshine Hour as a guest. I think we interviewed Faris Al-Rawi as a guest on the Sunshine Hour and other PNM affiliated persons. Mr. Hines used to be a regular, whether it is he called in on or we called him, or he came into the studio and so on. And people say, well, yeah, watch how the ILP link up with the PNM. I recall PNM supporters who used to call the radio station and take in the program used to tell us, well, we hope that the PNM wins and that you all end up as the opposition. Or if it is that the UNC ends up in opposition, that the PNM will put some of you all as senators or put you all on state boards and so on. That's what PNM people used to say. So that me went back to the PNM afterwards, because when Mr. Warner declared that the ILP was dissolved and so on, who went back to the UNC, who went back to the PNM, and who just decided we're done with politics. It is what it is. But as I said, I never left the PNM. But anyway, coming back to just touching on what Mr. Warner had to say here. He says, and make no mistake, Trinidad and Tobago today feels like one giant theater production. Everybody is performing. Government performs, opposition performs, media performs, activists perform, even ordinary citizens perform versions of themselves every day on social media. He says the problem is that the audience, the population itself, is becoming increasingly tired of the production. Economists debate often in language they alone understand, while ordinary people debate whether they can afford another increase in food prices or school expenses. That is the disconnect that now defines much of national life. There is the official Trinidad and Tobago that exists in speeches, press conferences, and carefully crafted statements. And then there is the lived Trinidad and Tobago experience daily by citizens trying to survive. With all due respect, Mr. Warner, you contributed to that. You contributed to us being where we are today. He goes on to say, despite all of the grand language about fairness and national development, many citizens are beginning to ask an uncomfortable question. Fairness for whom? Because inequality in Trinidad and Tobago is no longer subtle. Citizens are increasingly noticing that justice, accountability, and even public sympathy often appear unevenly distributed. The population is watching all of this very carefully. He goes on to say, One individual faces the full and immediate weight of the law, while another appears to receive understanding and accommodation given the circumstances. In one matter, charges dissipate with remarkable speed. In another, even in the presence of widely circulated video evidence and public scrutiny, charges are still laid against only one individual. We know who he's talking about here. So clearly he's at odds with what Mrs. Prasad-Bissessar is saying. He says people may tolerate hardship. Trinidadians and Tobagonians are a resilient people, but what citizens rarely tolerate for long is inconsistency. Once people begin believing that there are different rules for different classes of citizens, public trust begins to erode very quickly. The tension between sections of the population and the police service reflects the broader crisis of confidence. He says, let me say clearly that police officers in Trinidad and Tobago operate under extremely difficult conditions. They confront heavily armed criminal gangs and so on. Let me get this here. He says, Trinidad and Tobago today faces a crisis deeper than economics alone. We are facing a crisis of credibility. Citizens no longer know who to trust. Official optimism increasingly competes with lived frustration. So the government telling you all one thing, brighter days ahead. Yes. Don't worry. Everything gonna be all right. Tanku is telling you the economy has turned around and this and that and whatnot. After a year ago telling you the PNM crashed the economy. Today things are much better, but it's harder today to get 200 US in the bank than it was 13 months ago when the PNM was in office. I'm speaking from personal experience. Going to the bank, where before I could have get, if I wanted a 200, I could have gone and get this before I even became a politician. A year ago, a year and a half ago. Today, you go to ask for $100 and they're telling you, well, you had to come 8 o'clock in the morning, you know. But and by 8:30, it's gone. By 8:30. If you're lucky. So they put you on a queue and tell you, well, you might have to wait 2-3 days to get 100 US. But where are all the UNC supporters who 1.5 years ago, 2 years ago, you can't get 200 US in the bank, you can't get 200, all the bank giving you, and you can't get US, and you can't this, and you can't that. Where are they today? Is it easier now? Can you just walk in the bank and say you want 1,000 US and you get it? You want 2,000 and you get it? Has that improved? No, but everybody who had an issue and who were yapping under the PNM and the PNM mash up the economy, and it's because of the PNM. Today, they have the patience of Job. Situation has not improved. It has worsened. PNM decimate the Point Lisas industrial estate. It's like a ghost town, a cemetery. But in the last 13 months, we've seen more companies shut down. Big companies like Nutrien shut down the plant and they are getting ready to leave our shores. More plants have been mothballed. And the same people who were complaining about the PNM and the PNM decimate and the PNM kill the... Where are they today? Where are they? When you point this out to them and they cannot defend HYMC, all your mother, so and so. That's all they could say. That's the limitation of their vocabulary. Can't have a proper debate, proper exchange, because there is nothing to defend. Putting a set of square pegs in round holes. He goes on. At this stage of my life, I have also come to recognize that Trinidad and Tobago does not suffer from a shortage of intelligence or talent. We have brilliant people in every sector of national life. What we increasingly lack is honesty. Honesty about the true state of the economy. Honesty about institutional weaknesses. Honesty about corruption. Honesty about inequality, and honesty about the growing frustration many citizens feel toward the system itself. Really, Mr. Warner? Honesty about the true state of the economy? Are you saying that this government has been lying to the population? That when they try to misrepresent the latest IMF report and tell the IMF, say everything good, this government has put the economy back on a good and solid footing. Nothing could be further from the truth. Honesty about corruption. We see another story broke today, which I will touch on just now. Right? This time involving Heritage. And again, same problem we see rearing its head. This new dispensation under this administration of how they're selecting specific contractors for certain projects. That has now become the norm, right? in some cases in contravention of the Procurement Act. These are the same people who complained since 2020. For 5 years, they complained under the PNM that Rowley and the PNM gutted the Procurement Act, the procurement legislation. They water it down. They make certain goods and the procurement of certain goods and services exempt so that they could benefit their friends, family, and financiers. Complain bitterly that the procurement legislation that they put in place in 2013 and they claim they passed in 2015, the PNM gutted it and making it easier for thief and to engage in corruption. They have been in office for 13 months, have brought all manner of nonsense to the parliament in the form of legislation, but have not brought a single amendment to fix the Procurement Act that they said the PNM gutted and that the PNM watered down. So for the last 13 months, they have spent billions of dollars in procurement under a flawed, what they said was a flawed Procurement Act, a gutted Procurement Act. It was so horrible and so terrible. You need to put us in office to fix it. 13 months later, no effort, no attempt whatsoever to fix it. They told you all the 7% online tax. You all remember that? That Emberts and the PNM put in place to kind of restrain the amount of expenditure for online spending. People who buying things from Amazon and Shein and wherever else, and Temu and wherever else they buy their stuff, right? And it was impacting when the banks reported the amount of foreign exchange that was going on through credit card purchases, in particular, international credit card purchases. And Mr. Embert said, okay, we need to try and curb that. And they implemented a 7% online tax. The UNC went from pillar to post, right? From Toko to Cedros to tell the country how the PNM wicked and Embert is at Dwen and they're oppressing people, and they put that 7% tax just because they want to frustrate you all and to prevent you from making online purchases, so that you will go to the 1% owned stores and buy at exorbitant prices from the 1% owned friends and make them rich. That's what they told you. But they have been in office for 13 months and the 7% online tax is still there. Still there. They came to the parliament and they got rid of the Revenue Authority. They tell you the Revenue Authority was a waste of time. It was bad. It was not needed. We'll just fix the Board of Inland Revenue. They get rid of the Revenue Authority. They tell you the property tax, no property tax. We get rid of that. They come to parliament. We think for that too. Tell us Stuart Chung, $87,000 a month pension. That's not right. He was only Prime Minister for 1 day. Never mind the fact that he was Prime Minister from the 17th of March to the 1st of May when Prasad Bisesa took her oath. So that only in UNC maths, that is 1 day. For the rest of us, we know as a month and a half. Right? But that's what they tell you. Oh, you don't deserve a pension, $87,000 a month, and you have Rowley getting a pension and Stuart Young getting a pension, and it's a drain on the treasury, and we are concerned about all that money and the impact it's going to have on the treasury. But they hire 9 influencers, so they call them in WhatsApp, paying them in excess combined for the month over $85,000, almost $87,000. And what's the fundamental difference there? Is that the amount of taxes Stuart Young would have paid on the $87,000 is more than what the 9 of them combined are paying in taxes. So at least if Stuart Young was getting his $87,000 a month pension as former Prime Minister, right? The amount of taxes he would have paid on that is more. The tax man would have been getting more money off of that 87 than he's getting off of the 85 that they paying these so-called influencers salaries. Right? So you still lose. You come out worse off. Something wrong with giving Stuart Young his pension. But we just talk about those 9 influencers. We don't about the others. Those who on TTT Limited, who masquerading as talk show hosts on 91.1. What is their combined? When we talk about Andy Williams, Lennox Smith, Heavy Duty, Kingsley, Stephen Rees, David Welch, Opinion Box, a couple others. And then we have on the board, the chairman of the board, Michael Kerr, better known as Mikey K, whose name get called up in documents related to the live sport and his alleged affiliation to a company that was in receipt of some $92,000 a month to promote the live sport program, go around to the various to the various locations where the education and training was supposed to be taking place, just to do videography and to interview some of the participants and hear and document what they say, all the good things about the program, right? He's the chairman of TTT Limited. And then you have the likes of Anna Munsami, Miss Santa Cruz. Many of you may know her as, right? Those of you who used to listen to 91.9 back then, 2013, come forward, right? When back then they tried to dominate 91.9 and they had programmed as the one I used to call Gunsmoke, right? With Piper and DJ Biggs or MC Biggs or whatever they used to call him. Remember they had a show around lunchtime called The Showdown? And when I came in the afternoon afterwards, I would talk about it and tell you what happened today down at the Ponderosa, or what happened in Dodge City. Remember that? Right. Some of these guys on state boards today. You want to call NCW here on the board of Queen's Hall. How much money these guys making altogether? How much money they making combined? I'm pretty sure when we add all that the WASA people get it, and those at 91.1 get it, and those who on the boards, the various boards get it, it's plenty more than what Stuart Young would have been getting as his pension. But I told you that Stuart Young's pension would have been a drain on the treasury, but 85,000 by probably another 85, 95 or 100,000 combined. When we see how they rewarded all of the influencers, that's not a drain on the treasury, right? The largest cabinet in the country's history, that's not a drain on the treasury. When you have people like Philip Alexander, who adds no value to governance in this country, Anil Roberts, what does he do on a daily basis? David Naked, what does he do? All of these people who are parliamentary secretaries and minister in the ministry, who collecting $53,000 as base pension, as the basic salary, $53,500 or so, and then they get in $6,600 as a traveling allowance, and then they get $12,500 for housing, and then they get an allowance for telephone and so on. And all of them who have, because they placed in various ministries, have personal drivers and chauffeurs and so on. And then they get paid as well as elected members of parliament. So they get paid as ministers, and then they get paid as elected members of parliament to do the work, to go into their constituency and do the work, right? And then, of course, those who are serving on certain parliamentary committees and winning over $30,000 a month from that perspective. And if you're a senator, so you're getting paid as a minister and as a senator too. But what value have you, the citizens, derived from these people? Other than to hear Anil Roberts come on Doubles and Coffee and talk about red couch and who skin up on a red couch for Rowley and walk down the corridor and you pass a parrot and two dogs and all kind of stupidness. This is a minister of government who took an oath, right, to do right by all men, all manner of men, regardless of, yes, without fear or favor, affection, or ill will. Without fear, without favor, affection, or ill will. Like, these men forget that they took that oath. So when Mr. Philippa, as some people call him, as I call him, the counterfeit 1%er, want to sit down in his car, driving, no seatbelt, right? And you doing live to cost the PNM and PNM, collecting big salary. Because Kamala put you there to be her mouthpiece, to be her potong. You have to run out and back at the PNM and every little thing. And your taxpayers' money. Meanwhile, some more like catching all them royal. These people living it up. Money meeting money every month. Them not get paid already. Tens of thousands of dollars in their bank account since Tuesday. Some of you all who working in the NPOPs, waiting 2 fortnights now, 3 fortnights and can't get paid. You're little 2,000 and something. You can't get paid 2,000 and something after 2 fortnights, 3 fortnights. But they collecting close to $100,000 every month. Clockwork. No issues. Rubbish. So the DPP has warned, citizens, social media personalities, and so on, to refrain from commentary on this matter involving Kaya Sealey and the Joshua Samaru matter, albeit that Ms. Sealey has not yet been charged. As we understand, she's currently out of the jurisdiction. My understanding is that she's also a U.S. citizen, so there may be some complexities there. But we do have an extradition treaty with the U.S., so if she doesn't come back voluntarily and a case is made out, more than likely she will be repatriated to Trinidad and Tobago to face charges. And we know the uproar that has come out of that over the last couple of weeks. Since it was announced, citizens are left bewildered. Of course, the UNC faithful, many of them, siding with the government. But anyway, it's not really a governmental issue. Police, DPP, right? So the DPP is cautioning persons. So I'm not going to get into that. But I came across a video that Gary Griffith posted on his Facebook page a few days ago, and I found it to be very interesting what he said, because in fact, he predicted that this would have happened, and he did so. And in fact, the caption says, "This was an interview I did 3 months ago where I predicted the police would claim that Kaya Sealey fired on them." So I don't know how many of you would have heard it, but I will play it for you if you haven't.
You're going to hear eventually.
So that's no. Let me just get it.
You're going to hear eventually. You're going to state that the female had a firearm and she was firing at the police. Granted, if you look at the vehicle, the back window was, it couldn't be through the front because she would have shot her husband or boyfriend. It couldn't be through the back window because it was up. That back window was cracked when the police officers fired. So there's no way that they could see that the lady was firing at the police. But that is what is going to come eventually. You're going to hear eventually. You're going to state that the female had a firearm and she was firing at the police. Granted, if you look at the vehicle, the back window was, it couldn't be through the front because she would have shot her husband or boyfriend. It couldn't be through the back window because it was up. That back window was cracked when the police officers fired. So there's no way that they could see that the lady was firing at the police. But that is what is going to come eventually. You're going to hear eventually.
This is Gary Griffith 3 months ago saying that you're going to hear eventually that she fired on the police and that she, So said, so done. Right? So said, so done. He's a former commissioner of police. So, of course, there are credibility issues. The DPP's contention, and I suppose, is that when this matter eventually comes to trial, because it's already being played out in the public domain and opinions are being formed, he may be of the view that it may be difficult to find a jury that does not comprises of persons who don't have an opinion on this matter. Right? So that if it is, you were to receive she's charged and you were to receive a notice for jury duty come to you, because the citizenry is so involved and they are so invested in this whole matter and what is playing out, persons have already formed opinions based on what they saw. So that if you are called for jury duty, perhaps all of you listening may have already formed an opinion one way or the other. Those of you who feel that that is a cover-up, that Ms. Sealey is being framed. Those of you who think, who are saying, the DPP wouldn't agree to proffer charges unless he was satisfied that it's a winnable case, and therefore depending on which side of the fence you're on, you would have already formulated an opinion. And perhaps the DPP is saying is that if we were to, whenever this matter comes to trial and a jury has to be empaneled, it will be very difficult to find any citizens of Trinidad and Tobago who don't have an opinion one way or the other. But even if that is the argument, it is the evidence that will speak. So it is not that you would be empaneled as a jury and they say, well, all right, okay, this is the situation, right? And render a verdict. No, we know you have to go through the course of the trial, whatever evidence would have been presented to the DPP and the expert witnesses who will come and testify and so on. And then you now have to take what you hear and what you see in the courtroom and make a determination as to whether Ms. Sealey is innocent or guilty. Right? So that's how it works, as we know. But DPP seems is trying to avoid further discussions, public discussion, prevent this matter from being tried in the court of public opinion, but it's already been tried and the police have been found guilty in the court of public opinion. Right? But I say no more on that. They know how these, I know they're watching and they're listening, and then they'll come and say, I say or PNM MPC. Right? I ain't saying nothing. I have no opinion on it. If I do have an opinion, I keep it to myself. Me, myself, and I. The three of us will discuss it. But I not. Right? Okay. Let's see here just now. So let me get this here. In today's Express, Heritage's $570 million offshore contract under scrutiny. An internal Heritage document obtained by the Sunday Express, titled Approval of the Bid List and Procurement Strategy for Provision of a Production and Compression Facility for Southwest Soldado, places the value of the contract at $611,800. A $500 million contract to be awarded by Heritage Petroleum Company Limited through a limited bidding process for an onshore production and compression facility has come under scrutiny from industry insiders. Notice, this is not Office of the Procurement Regulator, right? This is not somebody send something to the Office of the Procurement Regulator and say, investigate this. It didn't reach there yet. This is industry insiders who are sounding the alarm. People who have been employed and involved in the energy sector for years, who are accustomed with these sorts of projects and the bidding process and the procurement process, and they are saying something stinks to high heaven. The facility is intended to process oil and gas from the southwest Soldado fields, if I'm not mistaken. I think the last time we heard about the Soldado fields was, well, the last time we heard about the Soldado fields under UNC government was when Prasad Bisesa and the then president of Petrotrin, Khaled Hassan Ali, had the press conference along with then chairman, Lindsay Gillette, to tell us, hey, we find oil, sweet crude. We could almost drink it. Remember they came with these glass vials or whatever it is. Sweet crude, we have 48 million barrels of the Southwest Soldado. That was the first and last time we hear about that 48 million barrels of sweet crude. Heritage has defended its decision to use a limited bidding process and exclude international suppliers from participating in the procurement exercise. However, the company's decision has raised serious concerns among several industry insiders because of the magnitude, scope, and complexity of the multi-million-dollar project. An internal Heritage document obtained by Sunday Express titled Approval of the Bid List and Procurement Strategy for Provision of a Production and Compression Facility for Southwest Soldado places the value of the contract at $570 million. According to the document, the following three local companies achieved pre-qualification status. One, TOSL Engineering, which has been providing a mobile offshore production unit since 2019. Its contract has already been extended twice, with the current agreement due to expire on March 7, 2026. So March 7th has gone. A further one-year extension is being sought until a new supplier is selected in March of 2027. Two, Namalco Construction Services Limited. 3, Anti-Corrosion Technical Services Limited. So here we have yet another company that is currently before the court under the EMBD matter, right? Accused of bid rigging, fraud, conspiracy, and a couple other charges, is now receiving favor from this current administration. The deadline for tender submissions was scheduled for the end of May 2026. In the document, Heritage stated that it planned to engage the market for a 5-year lease agreement with an experienced contractor to provide the facility. Now you're saying here, you intend to engage with an experienced contractor, but we are seeing here, based on that only 1 out of the 3 contractors have the experience for this particular adventure. Let me see here. Right. Aligning with its strategy of outsourcing services rather than developing in-house capacity. Why no open bidding? Industry insiders noted that Section 5.1 of the Public Procurement and Disposal of Public Property regulations state that a public body shall utilize open bidding unless the complexity of the procurement or market conditions renders another method more appropriate for achieving the best value for money. Several insiders familiar with the procurement strategy and bidder selection process raised concerns about the pre-qualification of 2 of the contractors. 2 out of the 3 that I just named, Namalco, TOSL, and Anti-Corrosion Technical Services Limited, ACTS. We noticed that one of the contractors submitted an application for pre-qualification, here it is, on February 13, 2026 at 10:04 a.m. and it was approved at 11:32 a.m. Just 1 hour and 28 minutes later, by someone within the company, another contractor submitted its application on December 11, 2025 and received pre-qualification approval 7 days later. Let me go that again. We noticed that one of the contractors submitted an application for pre-qualification on February 13, 2026 at 10:04 a.m. and it was approved at 11:32 a.m. What does that suggest to you? That somebody sitting down, waiting, because we're expecting this pre-qualification request to come in, right? Send it through, we're waiting on you. And then it just so happened to have somebody or somebodies who are responsible for doing this pre-qualification who had nothing else to do, right? They had nothing else to do but just to evaluate this pre-qualification request and approve it in 1 hour and 28 minutes. These people not even trying to pretend. They're not even trying to fool you to say, well, we will go through a process. If it's 3 weeks, a month, so then we could come and lie and say, well, you know, this is how long it took, and we went through all of the rigors of doing pre-qualification. 1 hour and 28 minutes? Oh gosh, fool we a little bit now. Just a little bit, make an effort, put in some effort to fool people to believe that you're not involved in corruption now. Oh gosh, boy. There is no way anyone can be approved so quickly, considering the evaluation criteria and the need to assess financial, technical, and HSE requirements. This process typically takes between 4 and 6 weeks, one insider says. What normally takes 4 and 6 weeks, they did it in 1 hour and 28 minutes. Several insiders also questioned whether ACTS and Namalco Construction Services Limited had proven operational experience in this area. One senior industry source questioned how Heritage determined the composition of the available supplier market. What process did they go through to say, well, okay, this is what we want to do, and these are the companies in Trinidad and Tobago that have the capacity to do it. The person is asking, this insider is asking, how did you all go about identifying just these 3 companies? How did you determine that nobody else beside these 3 companies could do it? The same thing we saw with the 3.4 billion for HDC, where they shortlisted 11 contractors, and people are asking again, how did you go about that? The same thing with the Alambi project, right? Where they shortlisted, and people are asking, because when I told you all last week, when Kyle Tak Singh was on 91.1, right, the now echo chamber for UNC propaganda, a big accomplished attorney could sit down there and talk rubbish about, well, you know, if you go out for tender for something and you know that there are only a certain number of persons who could do it, then you're not going to go out for selective tendering because it don't make sense. And give you the example, he's sitting down in front of a microphone. For example, if I wanted to put out a tender to purchase microphones like this, and I know there's only one company in the country who could do that, who could provide these, why would I go out to selective tender when would I go out to open tender, when I know that only one company could provide it? It just don't make sense. How are they identifying these companies? What is the process that you are going through? Right? These same people who come and make hell, AV drilling and the thief and fake oil. For years they talk about that. Where are these bleeding hearts? Where are they today to come and explain to us how the hell you could do a pre-qualification process in 1 hour and 28 minutes? How? When you have industry insiders who are telling you this should have taken at least 4 to 6 weeks. And they're still talking AV drilling now. Still talking that. But they have been in office for 13 months. Rural Munilal has been the Minister of Energy for 13 months. He was the lead person from the UNC who prosecuted that AV drilling fake oil matter. Lead person. He was the one who said he went to Miami to do his own investigations into this alleged bank account with and the 500,000 US wire transfer that he accused of Dr. Rowley and the owner of AV drilling and all of that rubbish. He was the one who complained that he has all this documentation and so on, and it was in his drawer for a whole year, and the police never come to talk to him about it. All of this information about AV drilling. He was the same one who said he did his research, and the UNC, at a press conference in 2017, he said the UNC was in possession of information with respect to this AV drilling fake oil matter that could bring down 4 governments. Not one, 4 governments, Munilal said that. So the government of Trinidad and Tobago, and we only have 1 government, so I assume the other 3 governments of other countries. He said that in a press conference. Today, he's the Minister of Energy. So he has access to all the information that they told you when Rowley shut down Petrotrin to protect AV drilling. Well, all right. You have been the minister for 13 months. You have been in charge of what is now, well, what was formerly Petrotrin, now Heritage, Warakara, and Paria. They have not had a single press conference to say, hey, remember we tell earlier, Rowley shut down Petrotrin to protect his friend. Look, the evidence here. 13 months, you can't find the evidence. All the documentation, or let's say they destroy. Up to now, 13 months as minister, you in charge. You all have access to everything. Not a press conference, not a press release, nothing to come and say, hey, all the Mark Saddam coming in the parliament to boss. And Munilal, who was the Mark Bosser before Saddam, 13 months of parliament, you all have not been able to come to the parliament to make a statement to say, we told you all that it was fake oil. And we told you all they shut down Petrotrin to protect Mr. Abash. You have not been able to come to the parliament or go to a public meeting to say, look, the proof here. Explain that to my UNC supporters. Explain it to me. Because when they were in opposition, they could say, well, they don't have access. They didn't have access to the information with respect to the road fatalities and with respect to the lawlessness on the roads. And that's why they told you they would have reduced the fines and so on. And then they made an about turn. So they said when they were in opposition, they didn't have access to the information to prove that AV drilling was really, that the fake oil matter was really fake. 13 months later, they have not touched that. They have not been able to provide you with 1 document, 1 shred of evidence to tell you it was real, that the PNM destroyed documents, and that Rowley shut down Petrotrin to protect AV drilling. But only sing that song for how much years? How many years they sang that song? It goes on. How did Heritage determine who comprised the available limited supplier market? From the market analysis we conducted, and this is the insider here, the supplier pool included TOSL Engineering, so they are not questioning the competency of TOSL, Compass Energy in Canada, Granda Energy Singapore, Aurora Maritime Singapore, and Aquaterra Energy United Kingdom, the insider said. According to the insider, these international firms are recognized specialists in supplying this type of equipment and service. Another informed insider criticized Heritage's position, stating, the concern is whether Heritage properly identified the global supplier market, considered international suppliers, applied objective pre-qualification criteria, and avoided artificially restricting competition. It seems that is the new procurement method for this government, artificially restricting competition, identifying who they want to give these contracts to, and then creating a procurement process and a criteria that only certain people could qualify for, and then use that as an excuse to say, well, based on these requirements, these are the only people that we identify. But we're not hearing how they identify these people. Well, we know how they identify. We know millions were spent for the general election. These people have to get back their money. Right. And we told you all that, we kept asking during the election, where is the UNC getting all this money? UNC, the PNM is in government, and they're spending more money than we are. Outspending. I'm not saying that we were inclined to use government money. But when you're in government, You just have people who come, who want to finance. I can tell you, I financed my own campaign. Right? No financier, nobody gave me. Right. I was a relative unknown, and I had to dip into my pocket. I reached out to some of my friends, some of my clients who are business owners and who were supporting me, and they said, hey, we're happy that you decided to go into the politics. If you want, we could buy you some jerseys. You're having a meeting, we have no problem. We could pay for the tent. We could provide some refreshments and so on. Things like that, right? So, but when we were hearing 15 to 20 million spending in Sangre Grande, Toco Sangre Grande, and how much millions was being spent in Tunapuna, and how many millions were being spent in San Fernando West, and how many millions were being spent in Aranjuez, St. Joseph. We were asking the questions when we were hearing about a whole warehouse with UNC jerseys. So whereas with the PNM, you would see there wasn't any standard jersey. Each candidate would have purchased their own jerseys, right? So you went to whoever is your supplier, wherever you could get it the best, and you would notice the jerseys are not uniformed. The UNC had one standard jersey, the blue jersey with the yellow stripes and the UNC logo, right? One standard jersey, all the candidates got that. Who paid for that? I heard there was a warehouse in, a friend of mine who saw it personally, a warehouse in Aranjuez. Though, if you see jerseys piled high up to the ceiling, how were these things paid for? How were they paid for? But you all weren't interested in that. When they were buying out radio time and television time long before the election date was even called, they were blocking time. How they paid for that? Radio time and TV time is not cheap. And we kept asking the question, where did this money come from? Well, it seems now we know. Payback. According to the Insider, these international firms are recognized specialists in supplying this type of equipment and service. If only 3 local firms were invited, despite the existence of international suppliers capable of providing the service, a legitimate question arises as to whether the supplier market was defined too narrowly. Value for money. Addressing the decision to invite only 3 local suppliers, one insider said the legislation does not prescribe a minimum number of bidders for limited bidding. However, the act emphasizes value for money, fairness, effective competition, and transparency. Another insider argued, for a contract worth hundreds of millions of dollars over 5 years, a challenger could reasonably ask, why were only 3 local companies invited when the offshore production and compression market is demonstrably international? The question becomes even more significant if no international suppliers were approached, no international market sounding was conducted, and there is no evidence that only 3 suppliers were capable of performing the work. Industry insiders also noted that the estimated value of the contract exceeds $500 million, making it a procurement exercise of considerable strategic, financial, and operational importance. So they didn't bother to go out to international tender to say, well, let's see if maybe one of these international companies might not be able to give us a better price. You all remember, and again, history repeating itself, the Beetham wastewater treatment plant that remains unfinished. When they were in opposition, I recall Rudal Munilal saying, well, we only need a $500 million more to complete the Beetham wastewater treatment plant, and that the PNM government don't want to do it because they're trying to spite the UNC, and it was a UNC project and all of that. 13 months into government, why haven't they found the $500 million to complete it? They wanted the PNM to do it though, but they in office 13 months. No talk about it. Find the $500 million and do it now. Since it was just $500 million to finish it, and such an important project. But why did I raise that? Because you would recall with that project, that the 2 companies that were identified afterwards were, to get a job, the final analysis were SIS, which eventually got it, and a company called Atlatech. SIS had 0 years of experience, no experience whatsoever in constructing and maintaining a wastewater treatment plant. Atlatech, on the other hand, had some 58 years of international experience. But somehow, SIS was able to win over, with no experience, was able to win out over Atlatec. And when one looked at the bid, the evaluation process, under all of the rubrics, right, where they were doing the evaluation and comparison, SIS got superior in every criteria, every rubric, superior, everything superior. And then they had issues with the other company. They indicated why they had issues with this and why they had issues on that and all of the things that they were concerned about with Atlatec. Long story short, SIS got the contract, and every single concern that evaluation exercise identified for Atlatec, which was the company that had the 58 years of international experience, every single one of the concern that they had with that company was realized under SIS. Till SIS bust on the work after receiving, I think they say, some 75% of the value of the contract, having achieved less than 45% of the project, right? Bust on the work, needed more money, election goal, and then Mr. Man picked up his Jahaji bundle and allegedly went to Panama. And we are seeing history repeating itself here. 2 out of 3 companies identified. Their competence, their history, their experience for projects such as this is under serious question, not by the Office of the Procurement Regulator, but by industry insiders who are in the know. Given the market conditions that have been identified, the use of limited bidding restricted to 3 invited contractors appears inconsistent with the legislative preference for open bidding. Open bidding with pre-qualification would have been a more appropriate procurement method because it would allow broader market participation, preserve competition, ensure that only technically capable firms are shortlisted, and promote value for money. Let me repeat that last part, and ensure that only technically capable firms are shortlisted and promote value for money. This is another Beetham wastewater treatment plant project in the making. Another added, I have not seen any robust or documented justification demonstrating why open bidding was unsuitable. In my view, the procurement method used in this request for proposals is vulnerable to challenge under the Public Procurement and Disposal of Property Act 2015 as amended. Several insiders agree that a more appropriate and legally defensible approach would have been open bidding combined with pre-qualification, pre-selection, and/or a 2-stage tendering process. All of the industry sources interviewed agreed that in the absence of a documented and compelling justification for limiting competition, the procurement method chosen may be inconsistent with Heritage's obligations to conduct procurement proceedings in a transparent, fair, and non-discriminatory manner while securing the best value for money in accordance with procurement legislation. So it seems that this is yet another project that is headed to the Office of the Procurement Regulator for review. This UNC government in just 13 months has Beverly Khan and the Office of the Procurement Regulator hoot, busy, plenty work. And what does the UNC have to say about it? Mr. Saddam Hussein, the Minister of Land and Legal Affairs, wants to cast aspersions on the procurement regulator as to where her loyalty lies, whether it is to country or a particular party. Asking the question, well, where was she for the last couple of years under the PNM? Where was she? That's what he's asking. And of course, the supporters of the UNC have taken cue, and they have now let loose on Ms. Khan. Right? So they know when the PNM was in power, when she was on which board and what position she held, but she also held position under the People's Partnership from 2010 to 2015 as well. So apparently Saddam and their research didn't go that far back. It only went back because apparently Trinidad and Tobago only started existing from the 7th of September 2015 come forward. Prior to that, it didn't have a Trinidad and Tobago. So we're only comparing. All comparisons to be done are from September the 8th, let's say, or September the 9th, because the PNM would have been sworn in on the 9th, the Prime Minister and the Attorney General. And I think, if memory serves me correctly, the Minister of National Security. Right? So from September 9, 2015 to April 28, 2025, yeah, that's the comparative period. Nothing existed in Trinidad and Tobago. We were just a desolate rock prior to the 9th of September 2015. right? So another project for the procurement regulator to investigate. And of course, if she and her department investigate and they find that there is something untoward in this, the supporters of the UNC will say she's a PNM. She's PNM. But let me just remind them, since the memory short, and we know that is what they're going to come with, that is their defense. This bunch of hypocrites. Want to remind them, and I read it last week and I just touch on it again. 27th of September 2024, OPR Tribunal suspends $15 million contract for Valsane Bridge and the award of a multi-million-dollar contract for the Ministry of Works and Transport's Valsane Avenue Bridge project to Mirage Hill General Contractors has been suspended by the Tribunal of the OPR. Right? This was under the last PNM administration. This was for a $15 million bridge, not a $500 million project, not a $129 million project, not a $3.4 billion housing project, right? There's a housing project taking place, HTC housing project taking place in my constituency, just behind PriceSmart. And recently, some of the residents of Crescent Gardens, which is most impacted by this housing development, would have reached out to me because they were having some issues with dust from the project. And they asked me if I could look into it and make some sort of representation for them to be able to get a dust barrier, or if it is that the contractor could probably wet the land on a regular basis while they're doing their work to prevent this dust. And I'm seeing the way it's affecting, and the dust is traveling for a couple of miles well, right? So it's not, so people in my constituency are impacted, as well as persons in the neighboring constituency of Trincity Maloney as well are also being affected. And so I had to go to look into that. And one of the things that I learned was that whereas the project previously had envisioned 592 housing units, that figure has now gone up to 780. From 592 to 780, right? If you want a thief, build, that's UNC mantra. And I'm asking, and when I look at the scope of works and so on, I'm saying it's from 592 to 780. It is clear what they're trying to do, right? Because 780 housing units is not 780 people, right? That's potentially 780 families. And if we average about 3, 4 or more persons in each family, right? You see where we go in. There's over 2,000, close to maybe 3,000 persons if you're looking at 4 or 5. Of course, not everybody there would be eligible to vote, because some of them might be minors. But that's a significant vote population that you're putting into my constituency. And when we look at the margin of victory in the last general election, right? And they believe that Malabar Mausika is now a marginal seat. I don't put it past them. And I understand that the contractor who's supposed to be building those houses, again, is another favored contractor of the UNC, right? Not a favored UNC contractor who's supposed to be getting that project. And I don't put it past them that when these housing units are complete, that they put their people there in the hope that they will be able to vote apart, right? Tell them, listen, you need to go and register, change wherever you're voting, from wherever you're voting to Malabar Mausika, so we could increase the UNC vote count in Malabar Mausika. But don't worry, we're waiting for you, right? We're waiting. But this is the state of play in Trinidad and Tobago today, under this government that talked about transparency and accused the PNM of corruption and all manner of wrongdoing. Every day is something. We saw, I think it was last week or so, the announcement that Nairi Alfonso would have resigned as the chairman of PARIA. Now, that one passed under the radar because the population's attention was focused on Kaya Sealy, charges against Kaya, protests related to that. So people didn't really resonate as a talking point in the public space, with questions to be asked, well, why did she resign? because I am certain Miss Alfonso hasn't been in that position for a year yet. And I'm certain that when she was invited to hold the position of chairman, notwithstanding her professional obligations, she would have considered it and say, well, okay, I could do this job. Because she would have known that this is at best a 3 year, minimum 3 years as chairman. She has been involved in the energy sector, as I understand, for quite some time. All right, so she would have had some ideas to the lay of the land. But the fact that she has resigned with immediate effect, not to say in a month's time or that, she has resigned with immediate effect as the chairman of Paria, mere months into her tenure, raises questions. Whether those are serious questions or otherwise, well, but it raises questions. Nairi Alfonso ain't no fool. She's an accomplished attorney, right? So it stands to reason that when she would have taken up this position, she was prepared to serve in that capacity for at least 3 years, subject to renewal at the end of the 3 years. So why did she resign suddenly and with immediate effect? I said, well, it was, there was no acrimony or whatever it is, just because of professional pursuits and so on, and certain opportunities that present, and there was no there. Rudal Munilal didn't want to give too much information. He just said, yes, I was made aware, as per standard protocol, end of comment, and it just ended there. But why did she leave? Is there some scandal that is going to break at Paria in the not too distant future? I think Ms. Alfonso owes us some level of explanation beyond what she has given to simply say, well, it's a lot of work and professional pursuits and so on. Nairi, don't do that. Don't do that. So let me get this here. Paria Fuel Trading Company Chairman Nairi Alfonso has resigned with immediate effect, ending what she described as a very rewarding but demanding tenure at state-owned fuel company, at the state-owned fuel company, which is under Trinidad Petroleum Holdings Limited. However, she denied suggestions that she was asked to resign. Efforts to obtain official confirmation of her departure from Paria Fuel yesterday proved unsuccessful. Contacted yesterday, Energy Minister Dr. Rudal Munilal said, yes, I have been informed through the regular process. Speaking yesterday, however, Alfonso said her decision was based on personal reasons and a desire to pursue new opportunities after more than 3 decades in the energy sector. A desire to pursue new opportunities. So a few months ago, when you took up the position, you didn't know that? You were these new opportunities. You didn't think, you knew you were going to be there for 3 years. What changed in a matter of months? Personal reasons and the other opportunities that I wish to explore at this point in time in my career, Alfonso said when asked the reason for her resignation. She denied, though, that there was any dispute surrounding her departure. No, not at all, she said, adding that she believed it's better to make a clean break. Alfonso confirmed her resignation took effect yesterday. Her appointment as chairwoman began on July 1st last year. Alfonso said she does not know who will replace her or how the company intends to manage her departure. And it sounds like she couldn't care less either. Because normally, if you're going to resign, you would indicate and you would have a period of transition during which time the company could identify, because we're talking about a chairman here. You could identify somebody and you could do a proper handover. This is where we are at, this is what we have done, this is the direction we were heading. And she resigned with immediate effect. Reflecting on her time at Paria, Alfonso described the experience as a lot of hard work and very rewarding, noting that the company has been operating with very limited manpower. Let me repeat that. Noting that the company has been operating with limited manpower. 13 months stay in office. She was chairman for, 11 months? Just shy of 11 months? What was done to treat with that limited manpower problem? That means you all have vacancies, right? Why weren't the people hired? There's the same people who complain, they shut down Petrochen and how much people lost their work and people looking for work. But here it is, she's telling you that Paria is operating with very limited manpower. One of the achievements she highlighted was maintaining a stable fuel supply during periods of regional disruption. Alfonso also pointed to efforts surrounding Paria's diving operations. There we go again. She said, I think I put the divers this year on a very good footing, and all things being equal, that should work out in the best way it can. The comment comes against the backdrop of the February 25th, 2022 Paria diving tragedy, in which Kazem Ali Jr., Yusuf Henry, Rishi Nagasan, Faisal Kurban died after being sucked into a 36-inch pipeline. So she says she thinks, she's not sure. I think means I could be wrong, I could be right, but I think I put the divers this year on a very good footing. And all things being equal, that should, not that will, or that would, that should work out in the best way it can. What does that mean? It should work out in the best way it can. You could give no guarantee. It should, but if it doesn't, well, don't say I say it. I said it should. I said I think. Not that I can confirm. Not that I am sure. I think I put the divers this year on a very good footing. I wonder if that company, LMCS, still has contracts with Paria. Speaking of LMCS, asking the UNC faithful now, aka the fully dons, what's happening with the, maybe you could tell us, or maybe you all don't care, the workmen's compensation for the families of the divers. You know, because the company by law was supposed to have a workmen's compensation public liability plan in force. And from what we would have read, the coverage was $250,000, which means that the families of these divers, aside from $1 million that they got from Kamla and the UNC, they were supposed to get $250,000 each from this LMCS workmen's compensation plan. What's going on with that? Because we know we heard that the plan, the premiums weren't paid and the policy lapsed 2 months before the accident, and that an effort and an attempt was made to reinstate the policy 2 weeks after the accident, which means that because it was lapsed at the time that the accident took place, there is no liability on the part of the insurance company. Because for them to pay, the policy had to be enforced. You don't come and, after an accident has happened, to then come and reinstate retroactively. It doesn't work that way with insurance. So maybe you can help us out, you know, because LMCS, the owner of LMCS, his son was one of the persons who died in the accident, right? And therefore, he would have been entitled to $1 million from the state as part of the payout to the families. But if that's the case, and there were 5 men, right? If he get the $1 million, which I am against, then all he has to do is to say, well, you know what, we take this million and we split it 4 ways, 250, 250, 250, 250. He shouldn't be getting any monies. Because we know that the inquiry, the commission of inquiry into that diving tragedy showed that LMCS was liable as well. Right? LMCS was liable in that incident. Just putting that out there. Some people seem to forget. But they too were liable for that, right? We heard about the slackness where one of the supervisors who was previously suspended or whatever, for insubordination or something like that, that he would have been given the instruction to remove some plug that resulted in the Delta P that sucked the men in. We seem to forget that. The UNC faithful don't ever talk about that part. All they know is Paria, and Paria. But they don't ever talk about LMCS and the role that they play. And that is the primary liability rested with negligence on the part of that supervisor who decided to cut corners. The report is available on the Parliament website, right? The 400 and something page report from that inquiry. You could go on the Parliament website and it's there. You could get a cup of tea, a glass of juice, a cold beer or something, and a piece of cake, and sit down and read it in its entirety. For those of you who are genuinely interested, and not just about propaganda and old talk. Just putting that out there in case all you forget. Added to it, when last you all heard anything about the refinery? When it opening? Because they commissioned a committee that was supposed to deliver a report since November last year, right? And we heard Munilal went to India and had some companies in India that were interested. And we heard some company from Africa, and then they went to the United States. And no, when Mrs. Prasad Bisesa went to St. Kitts and Nevis for the meeting that she left early because she didn't stick around for the retreat and cause all of this bacchanal now with CARICOM, right? Because she didn't go to the retreat and she didn't get the shoot and Sean Sobers didn't go to the retreat and all that. When she could have just stayed one extra day. That meeting where she went and she had a meeting with the US, she met with Marco Rubio and so on. You remember that? Right. And then she went to Doral in Florida for the Shield of America summit that lasted for 1.5 hours, where she was supposed to have a one-on-one with Donald Trump. And the only one-on-one we know is what we saw, where she walked up on stage just like every other leader, shook Mr. Trump's hand, right? Almost got her wrist dislocated with the firm handshake, and when he hold her up so, right? And she got a pen. That was the sum total. Then he left. And then afterwards, she would have met on the sidelines with, I think, the U.S. Secretary of Commerce and the U.S. Secretary of Energy and so on, indicating we have a refinery and we want to open it back. And he said he will see what he could do to talk to industry people in the United States. What's going on with that? So that was a big thing. That's one of the reasons why people voted for this government. They say, put us in office and we will open back the refinery. It's been 13 months. We are now in May. May has come to an end. We are heading into June. So some 7 months, it will be what, 6 months, 6.5 months since this committee headed by Kevin Ramnarine, former Minister of Energy, would have submitted their report. What's going on with the refinery? Nothing heard. They ain't talking that. All they're hearing is Dragon, Kokina Mannequin, or Manakin, depending on who's saying it. Loran Manati, or Manatee, again, depending on who's saying it. And they're only studying. Exxon Mobil come to Trinidad and Exxon looking to drill. And that's about it. Right? Don't talk about the refinery anymore. They went Guyana to their chamber energy conference. They sent no representation to our energy chambers conference, right? So they went to Guyana and they talked to whoever, and yeah, the president and whoever, and they tell us people interested in Ghana, people interested in India, people interested in the United States, and people interested in Africa. We've heard nothing further for the last couple of months. So I just ask him. So again, maybe the UNC supporters could tell us. Because that was a big thing for you all, right? Don't forget. Big thing. Rowley shut down the refinery to protect his friend, but Kamala going to open it back. You all didn't want, don't sell it, don't lease it. We don't want no international. This should be local. Should be local. But we hear India, we hear Guyana, we hear the United States, and we heard Africa. I just ask him. I'm just curious to know. Right? But the Prime Minister made an announcement a couple months ago that a diplomatic delegation would be going to Venezuela very soon. And we questioned why she said that and where she said it. She didn't come to the parliament to make a statement. Well, the media would have interviewed Sean Sobers a couple of days ago, asking him a question on that. And he indicated, well, you know, it don't make sense that you just send a delegation to Venezuela and what they're going there for, and they don't have a purpose. So we have to continue engaging the Venezuelan authorities. And when we could come to some sort of a agreement as to what we're going to discuss and whatnot and stuff, then we would send the delegation. Okay, so in light of the fact that the Prime Minister said the delegation is going soon, he could give us a timeline. No, he can't give you all any timeline. But we told you all that. That was just choppy talk. That was just fluff. Because we say, okay, you send a delegation to Venezuela to talk to who? Because Delcy don't want to talk to you all. Imagine Delcy going to India. Delcy went to Barbados. Delcy went to Grenada. Delcy ain't coming here. Delcy want to talk with Kamala. Okay? Right. No discussion. As far as you're concerned, Kamala is still persona non grata. And so they don't know, Venezuela doesn't want about no delegation. And it seems for now, that delegation that the Prime Minister mentioned and promised, hang up on a shelf somewhere collecting dust. It ain't going nowhere. Who is going to form this delegation? Imagine 13 months into office, one ambassador has been appointed. One. And that is the ambassador to the United States, to Washington, Neil Passan. Nobody else. As soon as they come in office, resign. All right, everybody resign. What we have at our missions around the world are charge d'affaires, but no substantive commissioner, high commissioner, no substantive ambassador. Who to put? That is what happens when you have a government that only sees citizens based through political lens. You're not looking at people's individual competencies. So, well, okay, this person, yes, they might be a supporter of the PNM, but let us look at their professional background. No, all we see in is PNM, can't put them. Can't put them. So who do you put? Because right now they're struggling to get people to put on state boards. We still have a number of state boards that are without substantive boards, right? And the work of these boards, these entities are being stymied because they don't have a board to make decisions. So all again is chirrup. And now we're seeing people resigning, people who are assigned to boards and who are appointed to boards resigning. We see, I just spoke about Nairi Alfonso from Paria, but to remember the gentleman, 2 persons I think would have left, not from boards, but the executive management of was it NGC or NEC or one of those companies there, who would have been there for years and so on. And I think one chairman who was removed, and he indicated that he was not going to be any rubber stamp, and he is operating based on professional standards, and notwithstanding the fact that the government puts him there, he don't plan to go there and take orders to do things that is inimical to the well-being of Trinidad and Tobago and the well-being of these citizens and taxpayers and the bossy truth. So when Rodney Charles told us a couple of years ago, nobody of integrity or with integrity wants to associate themselves with the UNC, and with all this bacchanal and hullabaloo taking place, people will be thinking twice. Do I really want to get myself mixed up into this? So that's why they had to be resorting to putting counselors, unqualified counselors, as chairmen of state boards. Unqualified counselors sitting as chairman. I have no problem. You all want to reward your counselors, you know. Go ahead. Maybe that's something that the PNM should have done too. But at least look at the ones with qualifications now, please, so that we could get value for money. They want to rename Nelson Island, so they're going to put together a committee to work with the National Trust to rename Nelson Island. But to date, the National Trust is without a full board. All they have is the elected members, because National Trust is a hybrid board where you have 5 elected members and 6 appointed members. 5 appointed by cabinet and 1 through recommendation of the THA, right? Those who are to be appointed by the government. And very soon, the term of office for the elected members will run out. But you need the full board to be able to approve the AGM so that you could elect new members. That can happen. But this is a government that's competent, right? They know what they're doing. Let me just read one more thing for you all here quickly, because I said I have an event, and I saw Brian was calling me just now. I just want to touch quickly on a letter that I received via email. Let me see if I get this here. From somebody who, unfortunately, has been a victim of this wicked, heartless, oppressive government. I'll just read a little bit. This was dated the 25th of May, 2026, addressed to me, Member of Parliament for Malaba Mausika. Subject: urgent request for intervention regarding the economic, emotional, and financial hardship facing my family following employment displacement. I write to you not only as a constituent, but as a wife, mother, and qualified professional whose family is currently enduring severe emotional, financial, and psychological distress following the sudden and simultaneous loss and disruption of employment within my household. For my husband and me, our lives have always been guided by the principle in 1 Timothy 6:6, but godliness actually is a means of great gain. We are both degree qualified professionals who built our lives through honest work, discipline, and perseverance. We raised our family on these values and contributed meaningfully and consistently to the development of Trinidad and Tobago. Before April 2025, our household was stable. We met all of our financial obligations, maintained our mortgage and pension commitments, managed medical needs, and lived with dignity earned through years of consistent employment. That stability has now been replaced with uncertainty, fear, and financial strain. My husband lost his position at the Ministry of Social Development and Family Services, and I was sent home from my position at the LSA, where I served as, and she states the position she was serving in. My daughter, despite holding a bachelor's in chemistry and biology, and working under a WASA project as a field officer, was not rehired. Although she has since secured employment, it is a lower pay grade than her qualifications, and she had no choice but to accept it due to her responsibility as a mother of a young child. So he didn't renew this young lady's contract. She's qualified. She has a bachelor's in chemistry with biology. And they bust her throat. But you hire Matara Cosbud French. You hired Twiggy. You hired Ringleader, who has now been dubbed the Brown Noser of the Year. You hire Mr. Miss. Mr. Miss, whose claim to fame was being all over, so this is not, well, his claim to fame is that, he was beaten badly. Apparently, he was on the road. I saw a video some time ago where, I don't know if it is, he felt a tackle at a guy or whatever it is, and he was badly beaten and arm broken and stuff. And, he's known to come on social media and regale with stories of his experiences and, his experience with one of his male neighbors who was desperate for money to pay the rent and stuff like that, and what he did and so on to assist. You hire people like, well, I used to think this Natty Royal person, and she was kind of funny. She was a TikTok personality before, and then I don't know how I thought she was a nurse or something, but I don't know how she ended up in that. Anyway, you have Stark Grimes. That's who they hire, right? Another cussbud. He and his misadventures. I think he had gone to the United Kingdom. He was living there for a while, and he had some woman and something. And anyway, so these are the people that they hired. And you have this young lady here who was doing whatever work as a project, as a field officer. She was not rehired. She's the mother of a young child. It goes on. Mr. Romain, I must emphasize that what my family is experiencing cannot be viewed as normal or acceptable within a fair and just society. The emotional and financial impact of sudden unemployment has been devastating, affecting not only income, but dignity, stability, and mental well-being. I can only imagine. How fair is it that my family has been pushed into unnecessary panic and hardship while navigating what appears to be a system influenced by nepotism, ageism, favoritism, cronyism, and other isms that disregard qualified and experienced professionals? My husband and family are deeply God-fearing people, and my husband has been placed in an unfair position to accept a low-wage position at a supermarket, far below his qualification and experience level, simply to keep our household afloat. My daughter has also had to accept employment below her skill level in order to support her child. We also had to accept employment. So we remain grateful to our God for his intervention. But the reality is that this downward adjustment has created significant difficulty in meeting essential household obligations. My husband and I continue to apply to numerous public and private sector roles for which we are fully qualified. Many of these positions are repeatedly advertised through national recruitment platforms and government channels. In some cases, the same roles reappear, yet despite repeated applications, I remain excluded or receive no response at all. The pattern of silence and exclusion raises serious concerns about fairness and transparency in these recruitment processes. There are also instances where applicants are required to submit personal identification documents, such as ID cards and birth certificates, in ways that appear to lead to quiet disqualification rather than fair assessment of qualifications and experience. It is therefore difficult to reconcile how there can be a systemic disconnect between qualifications, experience, and actual employment opportunities. I also respectfully raise a broader concern regarding what appears to be systemic unfairness affecting ordinary citizens. During my efforts to seek clarity from the LSA, I learned that the Equal Opportunity Commission generally addresses discrimination linked to categories such as status, origin, sex, and disability, However, I respectively submit that consideration should be given to expanding protections to include situations where workers are displaced or disadvantaged due to perceived political affiliation, association, or bias. It must be said that for many years, my husband and I worked hard to assist to build this country and still believe that every creed and race can find an equal place here. Right. The letter goes on and it identifies where other workers, contract workers, went through similar situations, right? So these are people who had stable jobs, who were paying their bills and who were comfortable, and now they are out of work, facing struggles. I have had persons come to me, tell me they were working in ministries, they had 3-year contracts, they were just 1 year into the contract, and this government came in and they've shut down departments, they've made positions redundant, and put people on the breadline. So aside from CPEP, URP, forestry, WASA, HEC, and so on, in government ministries, there is also this displacement taking place, people losing their jobs, contracts not being renewed, and people have bills to pay. And they had a reasonable expectation that I have a 3-year contract that I signed, so therefore at least I know I have a job for at least the next 2 years, or a 3-year job. And within that time, let me see if I can upskill myself and also start looking. So just in case my contract is not renewed, I'm not left with in a state of unemployment, being unable to pay my bills. But this is what is taking place. But this is the government that said they're going to create 55,000 jobs. This is the government that said that the public service is filled, overwhelmed with vacancies. And they have some 20,000 vacancies that they're trying to fill. Come on and apply to this program, this employee TT program, and you could get work. And months later, persons have applied and they've not gotten a response. They have not gotten anything and want to know what it is going on. Right? But this is what they put in people through. But note, someone is UNC supporter, say she's a PNM. She never indicated that she was a PNM. She stated the facts that prior to April 2025, she and her husband were gainfully employed. They were paying their bills, they were managing their homes, they were happy. This government came in and both of them lost their jobs and their daughter. All 3 of them. Struggling now to make ends meet. The PNM didn't do that. And the mouthpieces, who, if this had happened under the PNM, they would have been vocal all over social media cussing PNM. But today, the government that they support, the government that bought them out, doing this to people, and they have nothing to say and only want to come on social media and talk rubbish. Oh, penny this and penny that, and the PNM weak, and the PNM divided, and the PNM are coming back, and the PNM are Rowley and Stuart Young. Miss us with that nonsense. All they eating our food while people out here struggling. You're lucky about oppression anymore. Ah, don't worry, man. Brighter days ahead. Prime Minister says so. Brighter days for who? For who? Can't be serious. Cannot be serious. Sedana is asking if the UNC doesn't have something going on today. I'm not too sure. And some AB soon is saying the 624 murders under the PNM were caused by what? Well, you tell us now what it was caused by. And see, and that's all your problem, you know. Well, since you know 624 murders under the PNM, tell us how many under this UNC now. How many? You know the figure? Because the newspaper is saying today is 148. Then you have DJ Sheriff saying 152 and Ian Allen giving 151. Back for the last 10 years under the PNM, you all knew exactly how many murders it had because it was all over the place. Front page of every newspaper. You could have go to the TTPS website and get the number of murders. To date, you can't get it. Conveniently, the TTPS website that should be providing that information is always down. Conveniently. Right? And that's the problem with you UNC supporters. 624 murders under the PNM. When it is that the PNM was trying to bring legislation, all right, to be able to treat with these issues and the UNC refused to support it. Who was it that went to the court? And I keep asking you UNC supporters that. Which party's lawyers went to the court and petitioned the court to overturn murder as a non-bailable offense? Since 2022, persons who are accused of murder can now get bail and come back outside and continue to murder people. They could go, if they know there's a witness, they could now go and intimidate the witness or even bump off the witness, right? The PNM didn't do that. That was the UNC lawyers under Anand Ramlogan and Jayanti Lakshmidiyal and others who went to the court and argued that after 105 years of persons accused of murder not being able to get bail, time has come for us to get them bail. And the court agreed, and today persons who stand accused of murder could get bail. You know what you UNC supporters said? Well, you know, suppose the person innocent and the police like to give people frame case, and if they frame the people, since when the people, well, not easy, you know. If they're innocent and they're innocent, that's what you always saying. All of a sudden, several people, and then Jayanti and then come and saying, well, not because the person could apply for bail means that they would get the bail. But we saw several persons who were accused of murder getting bail, thanks to the UNC. When it is and I keep giving this as an example, Persad the Food King, the matriarch and patriarch of Persad the Food King, when it is that they were the subject of a home invasion, and when the police did the investigation and so on, and they caught the person, the guy who led, or who was the mastermind behind that, he was in prison for murder. And he was among those, the early ones, who was able to get bail after sitting on remand for years for murder. And the first thing he sought to do after he got bail and came out was to go and hold up this family, this old man and this old woman, right? Rob them. They had 2 guns in the house, so they took the gun, they took his safe, they took money and all kind of thing. And then we heard, well, the fella was engaged with a shootout with the police and they killed him. But he was behind bars. Thanks to the UNC lawyers, he came out. Thank God he didn't kill Mr. and Mrs. Persad. But you all don't talk about that. When the PNM wanted the bail amendment bill, when they were saying that persons who are held for gun crimes, that they should be denied bail for 120 days, right? Not necessarily the first offenders, but the repeat offenders. When it is the then Attorney General was begging, listen, he's saying for the repeat offenders, persons who are already before the court on gun charges, if it is that they come before the court again on other gun charges, that we should be able to hold them without bail for 120 days. They can't apply for bail. Well, let's say UNC supporters come and talking about, well, they want to deny people the constitutional rights to apply for bail and the constitutional rights to apply for bail. And this government oppressive and wicked and all of that. You all made that big claim. And the UNC said we're not supporting. They voted no. And unfortunately, the PNM was not fortunate, as the UNC is now, to have the requisite numbers in the parliament to be able to pass the legislation without the support of the opposition. The slim margin that they had, they needed at least 4 persons from the opposition to vote yes. They all voted no. And what happened? The bill failed. Right? It failed. So that when a man commit a gun crime and he's held, he can afford to apply for bail. You all remember the heist, the Pennywise heist, when those fellas and them held up the security van that went to collect the money from Pennywise, and they opened fire on the security van and killed, I think, two of the officers got killed, and the woman officer who was shot, and she was critically injured. She ended up suffering a stroke and all kind of bacchanal. You all remember that? The fellas who committed that crime, gun crime, remember they were able to get bail before the police were able to. They got bail, and I think 1 or 2 of them absconded, and the police couldn't find them afterwards. Thanks to who? Because if the UNC hadn't gone to court and done that, they would have been sitting in a prison cell, so that when the murder charges came, or whatever other charges came, they would have still been there. But thanks to all you. But you all don't ever talk about that. Right? The anti-gang legislation, they didn't want to support that either. Munilal come and say, sunset clause. I remember that. We want the data, and we want the data. Where are the statistics for us to support this, so that persons who are accused and who are held for being involved in gangs and so on, and gang activity, you could deny them bail as well. What Munilal said? When we look at the number of persons who have been arrested under this particular legislation for the last 2 years or 3 years, it reads like a binary card: 0111001111000. Not enough people getting locked up under this legislation, so we're not supporting it. They didn't support. Again, it failed. So when you all want to come here and tell me nonsense about 624 murders under the PNM and not acknowledge the role that the UNC played, do not forget Israel Khan, who is a self-professed UNC supporter. He said, I cry shame on the UNC when it is they refuse to support the anti-gang legislation. He said, I cry shame on the UNC. And he said, crime is going to go up in this country because the UNC chose not to support that bill, playing petty politics, because they figure if they don't support the legislation and crime goes up, that the PNM will look bad and it will improve their chances of getting back in office. Israel Khan said that. Who Israel Khan? That was the UNC's nominee in 2023 to become president. He was the person the UNC put up to challenge Christine Kangaloo. He said that. I cry shame on the UNC for not supporting that legislation because he understood what it could do as a seasoned attorney who earned the senior counsel. He said that crime is going to go up in this country and heaven help the UNC when it happens. Because they feel that if crime goes up, the PNM will look bad and therefore that will help their chances of getting back into office. So miss me with this nonsense. Miss me with this nonsense. PNM was depending on denial of bail to suppress murder. Calls are being made from jail for persons to... You can't be serious. You cannot be serious. So what is the UNC doing now to suppress it? Other than the state of emergency, tell us what else is the UNC doing. Please, help us. No, tell us, what else are they doing? Utter rubbish. Because you see, under the PNM, they didn't have what obtains under the UNC when they were in office from 2010 to 2015 and they were giving out box train contracts galore. In my constituency, which was then Dabadi Omera, 76 persons were murdered in the constituency of Dabadi Omera between 2010 and 2015 when Anil Roberts was the MP. And that's what we were hearing. Box train contracts being given out. This side and this one to keep, to keep the gangs down. Feed them. We're giving them life support money. When I was campaigning, and I bounced up a few of them, one guy in particular, tell me he's supporting the UNC because when Anti-Cams was there, I used to get my $1,500 every month from life support. Right? At least I used to get a little thing. That's what they like. But you're saying, the PNM supporting and the PNM supporting. And whose fault is it? If it is that the prison authority is supposed to be doing what they're supposed to do, how are the men getting the cell phones to be calling the shots from the prison? How are they doing that? You tell me what you wanted Keith Rowley and what you wanted Fitzgerald Hines to do. Because they put the jammers in the prison. And the men, and I am not aware that they could just snap their fingers just like that and cell phones appear in the prison. So it had to be that the cell phones were coming into the prison somehow. How many prisons officers have been arrested and charged for bringing in contraband such as cell phones into the prison? What you wanted Keith Rowley to do? Put on his khaki suit and Gideon boots and he's supposed to go and stand up by the prison and when an officer come in for the shift, rub them down? That's what he was supposed to do? Tell me what the UNC has done to fix that. The shots when Dana Sitahal was murdered. Tell us about that now. Just the other day when they move all these fellas from the maximum security prison during the first SOE and send them down to Tetron and send them down to Stobles Bay. The same thing was happening. The shots was being called. But when these fellas on the outside and getting bail for murder, right? More of them that getting bail for murder and could be going and orchestrating stuff. Who is responsible? So if it is that the prison's authority is not doing the work that they're supposed to do, that's the government fault? That was Keith Rowley's fault? Well, it cannot be serious. But you wouldn't blame Kamala for that, though. No, but blame Rowley and Hines. Rowley and Hines was the problem. Not serious. Let me see here. It looked like it's SOE for the remaining of their tenure. Cluelessness on what to do. No, they will never accept. Everything is the PNM and the PNM. The UNC is perfect. You have people sitting in our parliament with charges. Man out on bail, $1 million bail. Another one is under police investigation for human trafficking and prostitution. You have another one who is out, who is the subject of a civil suit and police investigation for bid rigging, conspiracy, fraud, you name it, right? You have another one who is supposed to be under police investigation since 2020, alleged to have been engaging in trying to hide money in his mother's bank account. in his mother's insurance policy, unexplained money that he put in the Prime Minister's bank account. All of these things are supposed to be under police investigation. We have an attorney who is sitting as the chairman of NGC, who is supposed to be under police investigation since 2014, accused of copying and pasting witness statements to defraud the state, right? Lying and witness testimony, written witness testimony. This man who stands accused of withholding money from clients. Imagine one of his clients was dead for 2 years and he didn't know. But in that 2 years, the man's case was appealed. And they can't explain how his signature ended up on the document to authorize the appeal. But today he's sitting as the chairman of a state enterprise. Today we are seeing a man who is before the court for witness tampering. He gets off on another big charge. He and the same other attorney, right, on a technicality because the main witness decided he's not going to testify, and the current evidence law requires that once you're alive and well, you are to present in person to give testimony. Right? So as long as he say he's not testifying, that is that. Case can't go on. But you are before the court for witness tampering, where you try to bribe the head of the PCA with that work to get him to withdraw a witness statement that implicated you in serious wrongdoing and misbehavior in public office. But today, his law firm getting X amount. All the briefs go into his law office because he's the best lawyer to have in Trinidad and Tobago. The best and perhaps the only attorney to have in Trinidad and Tobago. And they're not raising issues about that at all. Right? Not raising issues about that at all. So when you could challenge me. But as I said, Israel Khan was the one who said it. He cried shame on the UNC and he called them out. As he said, by failing to support legislation, crime would go up. He said it. So if you have an issue, raise it with him. But that's the problem. You always defend the UNC in every wrongdoing that they do. Everything is the PNM bad, and the PNM is 56 years and 60 years, and the PNM governed for the most amount of time, and the PNM do this, and the PNM do that, and the PNM wasn't perfect. Right? They weren't perfect. Yes, there were persons involved in the PNM who were probably some crooks, as you have in every political party. Right? They weren't perfect. But when it is you all want to pretend that Kamla Prasad, you all will say it had no corruption in the Piarco airport scandal, none. According to Kamla, that was a 23-year PNM smear campaign designed to make the UNC look corrupt. No wrongdoing. Despite the fact that Jolene John went to court and to Commission of Inquiry and testified that she went to one interministerial meeting. And according to her words, the greed was palpable. You could feel it. Went to Mr. Pandey and tell him, you see that interministerial committee you have there for the construction of the airport? You need to do something about that. Right? You need to fix that. And Mr. Pandey said, what? I am aware. It is a feeding frenzy, a milch cow. Pandey said that. But you all would never talk about that. Brian.
Good afternoon.
Greetings.
I had to come in.
Yeah, man.
See, because we have a chairman of our joint select committee.
Mm-hmm.
An attorney for certain people on that same joint select committee.
Mm-hmm.
But they want to castigate and destroy Senator John Bates.
Yeah.
But that chairman of that committee have questions to answer. He shouldn't even be there. He should have recused himself. He hasn't recused himself up to today. But nobody's talking about that. Nobody talking about this chairman of this joint select committee who represented those persons, and he is questioning and ridiculing people on that joint select committee. He's still there. Nobody is talking about that, but they want to castigate and ridicule Senator John Bates. I want saying that the opposition leader is not acting. How come nobody is acting with this chairman of this joint select committee? How come? Nobody acting on him? But they're talking about the opposition leader not acting on Senator John Bates. Senator John Bates has been removed who park illegally, and all he do is come and say, let me give you $2,000, and I said, he's supposed to be before the court. He has not been arrested up to today. Nobody arrested yet. But he in the parliament, talking to PNM. And was supposed to be before the court, whether he wants to give $2,000 to whoever that he business. But he's supposed to be before the court. Nobody is talking about that. Nobody. Let me tell you something why I called you earlier. And I apologize. But the point is this. No money in pass nowhere. This contractor hasn't given out any money as yet, from what I understand. There's nobody. He's supposed to be paying people. He's supposed to be paying the families. And no money has been passed. LMCS. No money. Nobody is talking about these things. But you know what happened? I learned something recently. If I tell you, Dominic, things are so bad in this country. Do you know it has 2 gas stations in Cuba? Gypsy family own one. And there's another one, 2 and closer. Nobody is talking about that. I couldn't believe it. When my son told me, I said, Anna, I want to sleep for myself. 2 gas stations in Cuba. Let people call and tell me I'm talking a line. 2 gas stations in Cuba closer. So if you want to get gas, you want to go to St. Mary's, or you want to come down to Point of View. That is the different. That is the distance that you have to face to get gas in Cuba. Cuba is dead. I have to go to Cuba to see for myself. There's nothing happening in Cuba. Absolutely nothing. And they're talking. What do you call it? The downstream industries seeing trouble. People have lost their jobs. It's not just this lady who you spoke about, A lot of people have lost their job. There's there's no nightlife, there's nothing going on in Cuba. Cuba is dead. The 2 gas stations, Gypsy gas station, closed down. Running Gypsy gas station, the little side thing where you can go and buy two sweetie and whatever. That little piece of that's all that running. But to get gas, you can't get gas anymore. The gas stations are closed. And people talking about that thing so good and people working. I believe the Roger was saying that things on the up and up, really. There's nothing happening. Petrotrin nowhere near to start. They could say what they want, but I don't give a damn. I want to see them press the button and start. Up to this morning, when I went to the market, I was talking to people. Petrotrin nowhere near starting. They could say what they want. Nowhere near starting. Things are bad in this country. The market, people are complaining that the money not going anywhere. People are complaining, but you ain't going to hear that. People are quiet. People are afraid. They're afraid to talk. But there's absolutely nothing happening, especially down on this side. Nothing. And I could not believe I had to go home. I said no. And my friend told me, I said no, I want to go to Cuba to see for myself. And lo and behold, the gas stations lock up. Lock up. And they're saying everything good? Really? A worker from Proman got shot and killed Nobody is talking about that. That been used once. I employ a pro man, shot, dead. But he is talking about that. But he is talking. And I haven't spoken about Alicia Phillips because that is before the court. But I want to tell her, go brave. A 120-pound woman have police like that. Hush him out. Don't talk. Hush him out. Hush him out. Don't talk. They can't see the commissioner of police. But I ain't want to go there because that before the court. So I wouldn't go there. But I want to say, Alicia Phillips, I just want to say publicly, thank you for being strong and being positive. 120 pounds have this country, have the police out there where how they are. 120 pounds, woman. That's what I want to say about that for now. But Dominic, things are not good.
Yeah.
Things are good, Dominic.
Yeah, well.
I'm not saying bad. I mean, it's really, really bad. Dominic, there are people calling. There are people who cannot feed their families. Cannot. And the money is not going anywhere. So all you can talk all you want and listen to the UNC and all they want to say with the UNC this and the UNC that. The UNC has us where we are today. And they have us, they want us to keep quiet. So there'll be another what you call it, coming up just now. Because you know why? That's how they're going to keep us quiet. Because they want us to stay quiet. Don't talk. Hush on your mouth. Don't chant. Don't do this. Don't do that. But they could chant down in Separia. They could chant down there. They could march down there. No problem. Chant and march in Separia. But don't chant and march nowhere else. Because the police will come for you. And this is what we have to live with. Dominic, is a crying shame and it is worrisome. And that's all I have to say, my brother. Thank you very much for the opportunity.
Thank you. So as I said, I have an event to attend, but before I leave, let me just respond there to this Zuku person who is constantly posting this same comment about Ayamarara and about what UNC did 10 to 15 years ago, which you keep ignoring, by the way. Your party was in office with the ruling majority for the past decade. What you and your party did to change the legislation. Apparently, you have on your bus yesterday and you didn't hear me say. I don't know what this ruling majority, right? In the last parliament, the UNC had 19 seats. All right? The PNM had 22. A difference of 3 seats. 22-19, that does not give the PNM the majority that they need, the constitutional majority to be able to pass legislation without the support of the opposition. Unlike what currently obtains, where this current government has 26 seats on their own and 2 rubber stamps from Tobago. So they have 28. That is why your prime minister was able to say very early on in the parliament, this new parliament, that they will pass legislation with or without us. They don't need our support. She said that, lest you should forget, right? So I made the point earlier, there were several pieces of critical legislation that the PNM sought to pass to treat with crime, and the UNC refused to support with the most frivolous and dotish excuses, talking about data, and the data doesn't support and they cannot support based on that. When the PNM came early in 2016 with the FATCA legislation, right? The UNC refused to support it despite the fact that in 2013, they would have passed legislation. They chose the clause with the reciprocity, the option with the reciprocity clause, which would have allowed the government of Trinidad and Tobago to request information from the US government on any US Trinidad and Tobago national who had property holdings or assets in the US. The same thing that the US was asking for. When in 2016, The UNC come and say, we're not supporting because we don't support the reciprocity clause because the PNM is going to use it to come after UNC supporters and UNC politicians. They refuse to support. Remember that? When the government came with the Explain Your Wealth, the civil asset forfeiture legislation, where if it is we realize that, for instance, you're a public servant or a private citizen, you can't explain your wealth, how you get this and how you get that, and the salary that you're making. We will seize whatever assets you have until we are able to ascertain that it was legally gotten. The UNC said we are supporting that because the PNM will use that legislation to go after UNC supporters and UNC politicians. That was always the excuse. We're not supporting because the PNM will use it. And none of those instances when those legislation was eventually passed after public pressure was brought to bear on the UNC. And people start watching them with cocky eye and queer mouth to ask them, well, why are you all not supporting this legislation? This is good legislation if you have nothing, if you don't have cocoa in the sun. You don't have to be afraid of rain. And then after that, when they eventually came to support it, at no point in time did the PNM ever use any of those pieces of legislation to go after the UNC financiers, UNC politicians, or any UNC person. But that was their excuse. So when you come and tell me nonsense about the PNM had the majority and what we did to change legislation, that is why several pieces of legislation, the PNM had to remove those aspects that infringed on the Constitution. Because once you are passing law that requires you to make any change to the Constitution, you must have majority support of the Parliament. And where it is they knew that the UNC would not support, they had to come now and take out certain things. And the UNC kept saying they're watering down the legislation and watering down the legislation. But they had to do that in order to be able to get the legislation passed because the UNC refused to support. And they know what they were doing. They did these things deliberately, frustrating the PNM legislative agenda, not trying not to get legislation passed so that to make it difficult for the PNM to be able to fight crime. But I will say one more thing on that, and you all are very dishonest. When Gary Griffith was the Commissioner of Police, and it seemed as if it is the TTPS had a control over crime, and Gary was doing all of this, it was Gary Griffith. The reduction in crime then is Gary Griffith. Everything is Gary and Gary and Gary. Nobody was giving credit to Keith Rowley. Nobody gave credit to Fitzgerald Hines. Nobody gave credit to Stuart Young. It's Gary. And it's because of Gary, so you all suddenly understood that the Commissioner and the TTPS had the capacity to treat with crime absent of the political directorate. Gary got all the credit. But when things go wrong, nobody talking about the Commissioner. Is the government, is the Prime Minister and the government and the Minister of National Security. Right? That is goes to show how dishonest and disingenuous you all are. No credit was ever given to the government, but that is the same government that took the decision to appoint Gary Griffith as Commissioner of Police. The UNC abstained because they wanted Deodat Dulal Chan. You all remember that? Where a certain UNC politician in his contribution to the debate ended his debate by saying, "Put the Indian," and accused the PNM of being racist for bypassing Dulal Chan and others and choosing Gary Griffith, who was fought. But citizens had confidence in the police when Gary was there. They say, yeah, Gary getting the job done. And everything was Gary and Gary. But when things started to go left, is the PNM. Blame the PNM for the 624 murders. Because it was Keith Rowley and Stuart Young and Fitzgerald Hines who were supposed to get up every morning, and they're supposed to go down to every police station and assign officers and tell them where to go and what to do, right? They were responsible for the roster. They were supposed to put on their gun belt and jump on their horses and ride out like Marshall Dillon and go and fight crime. So now we all have a state of emergency, and absent that, what are you going to do? How are you going to fight crime? So that's the only thing that they have, nothing else. When the PNM put social programs in place to be able to address the issue, because you all were saying it's because of poverty, and that's why crime taking place, because people are suffering. All right, the PNM say, here, what? We create a Ministry of Youth Development. Let's capture the young people from early to prevent them from ending up in a life of crime. PNM said that. UNC come and get rid of that, right? They went out spreading the Youth in Agriculture Homestead program, where they were giving these young people free tertiary education for 2 years in agriculture, 2 acres of land, a starter home, $20,000 to start their business and all of that. Well, if I done that, telling the young people, look at what Rowley want to give all. They want all to go and dig dirt in the hot sun and have these young people doing TikTok videos talking that rubbish when that is not the truth. But their supporters were lapping it up. As soon as the window opened, they're running and applying for it and getting through. And when the PNM now when Dr. Rowley said we're going to invest $100 million in Laventille, right, to treat with that issue, the issue of crime, when he created the committee with Hans de Veens and this guy, oh gosh, Anthony, I can't remember his name again, right? But this psychologist and so on, and all of them went into lab until talk to the young people to find out what their needs are and so on to help to treat with the issue. Or let's say, oh, they're taking 100 million to put in lab until to give to the gangsters. You all criticize every blasted thing that the PNM tried to do, whether it was from a legislative perspective or putting programs in place to help these same young people poison their minds. That was what you all did. Made it seem as if it was a bad thing. None of all the different programs that some of these young people were involved in to keep them out of a life of crime, or they criticized it. It wasn't no good, and it's the PNM and the PNM. Everything the PNM tried to do that seemed as affirmative action for persons of African descent, or they put to run to the Equal Opportunities Commission and the courthouse to claim it's discrimination. And more often than not, you all would have won the case and the PNM had to discontinue the programs. That is what you all were doing. And so that today, when it's the young African youth who are the ones killing each other and killing themselves and killing other people, and talking about this PNM and PNM. What have you all done to help them? Baby grant, $500 a month to make child. Color Me Orange, $69 a day for them to paint dilapidated buildings that should have been demolished years ago. Offering them $1 to purchase these apartments for $1 to take the responsibility away from the HDC and put it on them. That is what you all are offering them. When it is that the PNM wanted to revitalize East Port of Spain, and Roberts and the rest of them come and going on social media, don't listen to them. The PNM wanted to take all your land and get the 1%. All kind of stupid talk. Nothing. You all can't point to one blasted thing that the UNC ever did to help the young African youth. You all give Selwyn Ryan to go and write a report and a whole book to come and tell them this is the plight when everybody knows what the plight of the African youth was. But what did they do? The money they spent on that should have been invested. You all come at live sport. And the persons, the young black African youth who were supposed to be benefiting, they benefited the least. The majority of the money went to a set of people who create a set of companies to eat our food. All you all gave them was $1,500 a month and breakfast and lunch. That's how they benefited. Pay a man $34 million to teach them maths and English, and not one class ever taught. But you all wouldn't talk about that, but the PNM this and the PNM that. You know why? Because you all understand once it is that you have the oppressed African youth, you all could always blame it on the PNM for that. Because once you're African and you look like me, you're a supporter of the PNM. Utter rubbish. Let me just take Jenny and jump out of here. Yes? You understand my pressure today. Jenny.
If you remain still asking to you and all those who looked on the facts of something, I want to tell you I really enjoyed the contribution at the meeting.
Thank you.
In MP's Marvin Gonzalez constituency. I also really appreciated Marvin Gonzalez's contribution. It makes me feel that football material boots and run out, you know?
Yes.
That kind of fire that was brought on the platform. So congratulations again. Dominic, could you agree with me that people's reality sometimes are based on their perception of it?
Yes.
Right. Because I want to draw it close so people to understand like exactly what I'm talking about, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you put the letter 9 on the ground and you have two people standing opposite each other.
Mm-hmm.
One will see it as 6 and the other one will see it as 9.
Yes.
But are any of them wrong? It's based on the perception. Because you won't stand up and see it as 6. It's based on what he's seen or she's seen as just 6. So me, based on that, I am saying my perception is that the UNCs are very racist and the racist government, very unpatriotic, very undemocratic, and very authoritarian and authoritative in the behaviors, right? And why I say racist, when I look at the reality of things based on my perception or when I see it, it seems that everything that the African people are involved in or that could benefit people of African descent, the UNCs are opposed to it. Where I'm going with this, NGC. They were able to boast the chairman that they saved so much money from not having to fund things. And one of them is the track and field. We usually give sponsorship to that for track and field. Who do we know take part in track and field a larger number? It's not our fault, it's not the other ethnic group's fault, it's just that is how it is. Mostly people of African descent. They cut sponsorship to a number of steel bands who are the key band players in this country, mostly of African descent. Recently we had just a memo coming out the day before, the 5th of May, stopping and saying that there will be no track and field primary school championship. We know coming out of that is a lot of people of African descent who usually get the opportunity to get the scouts come around to watch them, and they get to go to different clubs to hone the skills and all that. We have Keyshawn Walker, our first gold medal Olympian in traveling. He came out of that whole situation, and I can go on and on. I am asking because somebody told me, I didn't make notice of it because I haven't been down at the Savannah Reef, that the North Stand is still up. And the person is telling me usually by now the North Stand is down because what happened, the Emancipation Support Committee, so emancipation and before and after,
yes,
they have the whole village there where they sell food and African culture and everything that deals with Africans, right?
Mm-hmm.
And also independence. It is usually done for that. So I'm asking again, independence is widely celebrated by a lot of people of African descent. It's not that we just like to go. The thing that it just happened, that is how it is. So I'm saying every avenue, and the thing that you just said also, every avenue they have where people of African descent can get a chance to be or to become, it seems as if it's being stifled by this government. And again, it may be, based on my reality or my perception, it is that they want the people of African descent to remain on the ground and to just get crumbs and fight up among themselves and say PNN never do nothing for them, rowdy, wicked and bad, or they just killing one another, everything negative. Because there's not a day I see they come on Facebook, social media anyway, and promote the amount of African businessmen and women that we have successful in this country. The amount of intellectuals who have African descent in this country and successful. Businessmen, businesswomen, sportsmen, sportswomen, tradesmen, tradeswomen. You don't see that. They keep portraying us as these people who just fight among themselves, grabbing a barrel. I'm not saying that there's not some truth in it, of course, because we are human beings at the end of the day. In the Indian community, it has grabbing the barrel too. They just treat it differently. In the Indian community, it has people who are not academically inclined, just like any other race, but they don't treat it that. It has them who worthless, they'll be the woman, they'll be the man, they'll be thieving, they'll be robbing. So the things that happen in our community is not unique to ours. However, you don't ever hear they speak about the other ethnic groups and the challenges they have. It's always the people of African descent, they keep tonguing us in their head. And unfortunately, some of our people fall into that trap and do not stand up and say, hey, I will be counted, my voice will be heard. I am not of that, I will do this, I will do that in a positive way. You know what they just do? People that go, yeah, I know African people is man. And we ourselves just put that negative energy in the space when we talk about our African brothers and sisters. I'm saying again, this UNC government is very regressive and very racist. I don't have an issue. I always say at the end of the day, this country, our anthem said, every creed and race, find an equal place. The People's National Movement has always been a national party for all races to feel comfortable. All the government policies and the PNN that Kamala Prasad, the sector, and those like a generation after would have enjoyed is because of the People's National Movement, education, houses, every infrastructure in this country was done and built by the People's National Movement. And going prior to that, even coming out of enslavement or within enslavement, the first builders of Trinidad and Tobago were people of African descent. We did not run away and say we don't want to work because we're lazy. We said we're not going to work for free after you all free us from enslavement. We're not going to work for free. Let us be paid for our money. They didn't take us. They went indentured laborers and they brought them here. That is quite okay. However, don't ever mix up the two arrivals. One was not they wanted to come. One day wanted to come to escape, of course, the Indian system in India, whether they were fool or whatever, they wanted to come to seek a better life, and they did. Nobody said to that. But do not for one moment continue with this narrative that African people lazy and did not want to work, and African people achieve nothing, and African people just weak. And no, that is untrue, and it's time our black academics, even Indian academics and other races academics, come and speak the truth. Because our history did not start in this country in 1799. We had a history prior to that, and people need to understand the history. And again, I say, I am willing to stand with any race in this country who is willing to build this country. I will stand shoulder to shoulder with persons of African, Chinese, Syrian descent, whatever it is, to build this country. But I will not stand next to anybody and hold my head down and be ashamed to say that I'm black, I'm African, and that I'm proud. Thank you, Dominic, as usual, for giving me the opportunity.
Thank you, Jen. Right. So I have to say thank you to you all for allowing me to come into your space this afternoon. You know, and you all know I do like the race talk, but it is a fact. And when we look at the reality of the African, it's not just Africans or persons of African descent in Trinidad and Tobago that facing this reality. Globally, look at what is taking place up north in the United States now, where that you have white America is trying to put laws in place to suppress the ability of black people to vote, trying to get rid of districts that have predominantly black and have had black representation. They're trying to suppress that and all. And when it is that we talk about these things, the first thing persons of other races like to jump up and say, oh, we play in the victim mentality. People, I remember Mr. Pinal, who used to call the radio station talking about slavery was how much years ago and we should get over it. Really? That is a part of our experience. But he, being of East Indian descent, wanted to tell us, get over it. Because none of us who are alive today went through slavery, and that was our ancestors and so on. But yesterday, what did we see? How much money that they were spent and the significance that they placed on East Indian arrival, right? The reenactment and all of these different things. That's important to them, and they must hold on to that and cherish it and pay homage to the contribution that made to Trinidad and Tobago society today. But we of African descent, they want to tell us, slavery, get over it. Get over the victim mentality. But yet still, you all continue to perpetuate that very same thing. Because when it is the young African youth who goes to school, who live in Laventille, but because he put Laventille or Beetham or Steelers on his resume as his address, all of a sudden, from the time they see that now, we don't want to hire him because look where he come from. You're stigmatized places that you know nothing about, have never been. And the only concept that you have of Laventille and Beetham and Steelers is what you hear. But maybe some of you all need to take the time and go and actually visit these places and see. Some of these people living plenty better off than some of you all who live in these so-called upscale areas, have more education than some of you all. But all you see is the color of their skin and the texture of their hair, and you form an opinion one time. Yeah, he's a bandit. You're clutching your purse because you figure you're looking, you see, right, he coming to snatch my purse. We see any fights are taking place, and unfortunately it is persons of African descent who engage in these students who engage in these fights and so on. But what are we doing to fix that? You know what the UNC decided to do? Put police in the schools, label the schools at risk, high risk, and put police. So whole day all these students seen as that are armed police with gun, and what are supposed to do? Intimidate them. Because why do you need armed police officers? The purpose of having a gun is if the situation arises to use it. Not to say tasers, you know, armed with guns. What message you send into these young people, right? When you label that. So if it is that I am here and this school is an at-risk school and I have police there, and let's say I am a child who is doing SCA, I don't want to go to that school. I don't want to go to no at-risk school, no high-risk school. And you all are creating a stigma for these schools rather than creating programs to go in there and encourage these young people. Let persons who are accomplished go and talk to them and tell them this is the opportunities. But when these children sit down home and they see their parents struggling, when I could go to a primary school and the principal could be telling me that she's seen an increase in calls for the last 8-9 months from parents who used to work CPEP and URP, both parents working CPEP, or both parents working URP, or working forestry, one working forestry and one working CPEP. Both of them lost their jobs. Can't afford to send the children to school, can't afford to provide proper meals. And when these children end up on the wayside, because mommy and daddy don't have money to send them to school, what are they supposed to do? What are you all doing to fix it? It is the government that you all put in place, put these parents in this situation. So they're not coming to school. They don't know where the next meal is coming from. They're always seeing every time they see their mother, she crying, right? Because children hungry and natural instinct as a parent, she want to help, looking for work all over the place and can't get any because there are tens of thousands of others like herself who looking for work. And just like the father, when he make ends meet, trying to make ends meet. And if you get a little end here or a little end there, it's just enough to maybe to buy some food and send the children to school. So when you have a household, if it is, and that's the thing that upsets me, if you have an African household with 3 or 4 children, who tell them to make all them children? If all they know, they could not mind them where you went and make them for. But in the East Indian household, yes, the more children you have, that is good. That is very good. Yes, we encourage that. Because as Satmarad say, when the African was beaten pan, the East Indian child was beaten book. And this is the kind of stupid messaging that is put out there by persons of authority. And what message you are sending for the young people when they're hearing that? When it is that you have SCA and the top 5 of East Indian descent, and people in the UNC like to put up that they see, look, the East Indian doing so great, and watch the African and them. And you trying to tell the child who probably come, who's of African descent, who came 9th or 10th, that somehow he is inferior because he didn't come in the top 5. And that is why the PNM decided to get rid of that. But they brought it back because we want to showcase. And you all are not thinking of what this does psychologically to these children. And why it is there. Because when they were in primary school, they weren't fighting like cat and dog. When they were in primary school, they weren't behaving like hyenas in the African jungle, as Dr. Ali said. No, they weren't behaving like that. It's when they reached the secondary school and they're seeing the disparities and they could understand it more. All of these little things, you all don't understand how it impacts. When the students see the parents who pulling up with the BMW and the Mercedes and so on to drop off the children to school, and the poor child can't engage in certain curricular activities, extracurricular activities in school because mommy, I can play cricket, but mommy can't afford to buy the game. She can't afford to buy a tug for me to play football. So you can't do anything because your parents just struggling just to be able to send you to school. But the others, whose parents have the money and who have access and can be able to send the child to do this, that, the other, and the next. This impacts when the child is going to school and they don't have 2 or 3 of the textbooks. This impacts them as well. And we're not having that discussion. They can't do the homework because they don't have the textbook. The embarrassment that they feel when they have to be using somebody else's textbook and all of that, and it's no fault of their own. But every time the PNM tries to do something to help the African community, the UNC always seems to make it out to be something bad. East Port of Spain Development Corporation set aside $3 million to provide grants of up to $20,000 to entrepreneurs from East Dry River and the East Port of Spain area to improve their business. So all these people who selling on Henry Street, Charlotte Street, with a little table and stuff, East Port of Spain Development Company under the PNM was saying, listen, come. We see potential in you. We're willing to give you a loan of a grant of $20,000 to expand your business. And we want to be able to provide you as well with the technical support, give you some training so that we wouldn't just give you $20,000 and it blown. So you know how to put it to the best use. We have space in New City Mall. We will give you a free stall, or we will give you a stall at reduced rent. All of these were opportunities that they were presenting to these people. And the UNC make it out to be, oh, look, discrimination. So why are they not doing that? When you read the comments of the supporters on Facebook, so how come they're not doing that in Chaguanas? And why they're not doing that in South? And why they're not doing that here? Because these communities need direct intervention. That is what they needed. But direct intervention is a problem once it's in the African community. It's discrimination. They talk about Manning had a slush fund for scholarships. That was an issue. Fitzgerald Hines talked about this land program that the government had where they were giving out land for agriculture purposes. And he expressed disappointment that when they look at the list of persons who are applying, that they saw a shortage of persons with African names, or they make it out to be that as racist. So that's how the government doing things now. They're giving out land on the basis of race. The fact of the matter is that we need targeted intervention into the African community. And what we need is that for persons who support the UNC to stop fighting now the PNM every time they try to do that, because that is what is needed. But you all wouldn't accept that. It is needed. Not everything is about discrimination. We recognize that that particular community needs a little extra help, a little more than what the other communities need. Because you all have your groups, you have your different organizations that do things to help. But there is a shortage of that in the African community, and we need to fix that. Jenny just talked about the Emancipation Support Committee. Just now is emancipation. And as she rightly said, the North Stand is still up. We don't even know if it will come down. This government that boasted how much millions for the Flavor Village. But yet still, 2 days ago, we see Beverly Ramsey Moore having to do an extempo. Montaigne And still, no money has come from the government to pay the same pan players. Right? All is so concerned about what the PNM was only giving them 500 and what 500 could do, and the UNC gave them 1,000 or whatever. Up to now, they haven't gotten it. Prize money for the bands. Carnival gone so long. Up to now, they haven't gotten that prize money to be able to share with the players. All of these little things that we don't see. But they had money for all manner of festivities yesterday. Pay the people. Carnival judges have not yet been paid. They came out and they worked. Months later, they can't get a pay. Where is the money? They came mid-year review for millions of dollars last year. Come with this big budget last year in October. Tell us, is enough money? We asked them, is this enough for this? Is that enough for that? Yes, it's enough. And if we need more, we will come in the mid-year review. But you're dragging out the mid-year review. Right? Well, let's see if it will come in the next couple of weeks. But it's only until our citizens wake up and realize you all like to cuss politicians. I know the politicians this and the politicians that, and when things get boring. No, but the truth is, some politicians, I tell you, I am not one of those, right? I am not one of those, because when you like to say politicians don't care and they don't care, trust me, my bank account speaks differently. Because when people come to see me and I realize that they genuinely need, and we try to help them the best way that we could. I wish everybody who comes to me, former CPAP worker, whoever, who looking for a job, that I could find a job for them. Because I know the impact it is having some of these single mothers who come in and their husband, their child father incarcerated, and they're trying to do it on their own. But it's tough, because this government took away their jobs. It wasn't perfect, it wasn't the best, but at least under the PNM, they had something. They could pay their bills and put some food on the table. Now they have nothing. And I'm here to talk about some of these women having to be selling their bodies. That's what they have to resort to be able to feed their children. And then when they get pregnant, you all make it as a bad thing. Well, who tell her to go and open her legs? And why is she making a set of children? And it's 5 different child father. And Dr. Rowley said, choose your men wisely, as I assume. He's disrespectful. But Alexander said it the other day, and only give him a round of applause for that, right? Because it depends on who it comes from. If it comes from the PNM, it's bad. But the UNC, well, yes, it's making sense. Give him a round of applause. Ah, boy. This nonsense. I'm going to see what this man's saying here. Bachelors who blaming UNC for black people suffering. Why you think crime was so high under the PNM? And it was because of poverty. So that's your logic. So crime was high under the PNM because of the poverty, right? But it have more poverty now. More poverty now. And what happened? And you are saying that I'm blaming UNC for black people suffering. Have you been listening to me? The point I specifically made is that and you all never gave the PNM the flowers, not that they needed it, for all the work that they did, for all the programs that they offered. Because as they say, idle hands, the devil's workshop. All this and Foster comments and all this kind of stupid talk. What has the UNC done in the last 13 months? Bachelor, what has the UNC done to help the African youth, to treat with that whole issue? What have they done? Tell me one program they have put in place to help the at-risk African youth. We know what they did. I just said they put police in schools, label them at risk, right? And when you go to these schools, the majority of the persons in these schools are of African descent. So that is right. That's how we deal with them. Put police there, and if they get on bad, put some licks on them and lock them up. So 19 young persons have been charged so far because of that initiative. And these young people now have a record. So when they leave school, because of their youthful indiscretions, if they try to go and get a job and the job requires them to get a certificate of character, it will state that they have charges. So obviously that is going to impact them and their ability to be able to get jobs, right? What do you think is going to happen after that? When they can't get a job because they got into one fight while they were in school. And whereas normally they would probably just get suspended or expelled, now they're getting a charge with it. So it's on their record and they can't get a clean COC. So that is going to impact their ability to get a job in the future. What do you think is going to happen? You tell me, what else has the UNC done? They said they had the answers to everything. All the programs that the PNM put in place. Over 50 programs under the Ministry of Youth Development and National Service that a lot of these young people were getting involved in. Many of them were close to graduating when this government came in and shut down the programs. So they don't even have a certificate to say, but I am qualified to operate a crane. I am qualified as a linesman, an electricity linesman. They couldn't get the certificate. They were just on the cusp of graduating. You shut down the program. So they learn, they have the competency, but they don't have the certification to say they did this program and they qualified to do this. So that affects their employability. You tell me, what did the UNC put in place to replace that? Did you ever give the PNM credit for that? Over 50 programs. As I said before, if there was a program that didn't exist and you mention it too loud and Foster Cummins pass and you hear it, bet your bottom dollar within the next 2 weeks, the ministry announcing a new program. They had the youth caravan where to market these programs, they were going all over the country in different constituencies, not just PNM constituencies. If the youth will not come to the ministry will come to them, sign them up for the program so that they could go out there instead of just sitting on the block and smoking weed and they don't know about these programs that were available. We will go to them with this caravan. We will help them to sign up the application form and get them inside. UNC get rid of all of that. You tell me, what did they put in place to replace that? What did they put? SOE, suppress, right? The number of little children that have been murdered in just this year alone is unprecedented. Unprecedented. Who are we blaming for that? PNM? Yeah, blame the PNM for that. Because the PNM put guns in their hands, right? UNC said the borders was porous. The borders porous under the PNM. They've been in office for 13 months. The borders closed now. How are the guns still coming in? They had all of the answers. That's all your problem. Claire is saying every service provider is being negatively affected. I am seeing doubles vendors outside beyond 12 noon, unlike before. So true. So very true. PF Cutters is saying, regardless of circumstances, when those same Africans strive in education and otherwise, people like the late Inshan Ishmael racially insult them and play down those achievements. Clearly, in the case of Kareem, right? Kareem today is an accomplished attorney. But they cut corners and so on for him to get in because he couldn't get in based on his grade. That is why that particular scholarship was created for that, for those who could not get into UE through the usual matriculation process. That particular scholarship was created for that. So Kareem didn't do anything wrong. He qualified for the scholarship and he got in and he went and he studied and he passed his exams, and today he's an attorney at law. Today he's winning cases in the court. But you all don't see that. But all they can say about Kareem, and they cut corners for him to get into UE, and that's all you all could focus on. The only thing you could focus on, nothing else. Anyways, look. Ah, boy. You see. So true. But hopefully, I don't know. Hopefully, we will wake up, right? And we will understand that if you want to make a change, start recognizing the young people. Not everything is about academics, right? Because not everybody is academically inclined. Thanks to Patrick Manning and the PNM that we have UTT today, so that persons who are inclined to those types of courses that are offered there, they could go and do that. When it is, don't forget, it was the UNC that was against the UTT, so we don't need another university. We have UE and we have all these tertiary level education institutions. We don't need UTT, but today they embrace UTT and want to expand. Thanks to the PNM for doing that. PNM created the Laventille Technical Institute, where the old Rumbon used to be on the main road there in Laventille. Right? Whose fault is it if some of these young people prefer to run across the highway and jump on them garbage trucks to go and see what they could get, rather than go and sign up for a course? The PNM put the things in place. They put the things in place. When it is people coming to me every week and they want a job in the borough, they want a job in the corporation. Why? Whose fault is that? When we tell them, well, you know, based on your qualifications, we have this job for you or that job for you. Yeah, but they have 1,000,010 excuses. What is you want us to do? We provided the opportunities. You could lead the horse to the water. You can't force it to drink. And the fact of the matter is you wouldn't win with everybody. But we created the opportunities for them. And many of those opportunities, you UNC sycophants will not admit that the UNC shut down. They no longer exist today. Some of their own supporters were part of these programs. All these people who are looking forward to the 2 acres of land, they start a home and the $20,000 to start a business in abeyance. They don't know what it is going on. For almost a year, they've been asking what's going on with these programs. Nothing. The Shade House project down in Chagaramas, when we saw videos under the Ministry of Youth Development again with these young people growing their crops and actually selling it on the spot. Where is that today? Covered in bush. Covered in bush. Right? But we're not talking about that. But blame the PNM for the plight of the African youth. But when the PNM try to help them, is a problem. Because we must open it up to everybody. Targeted intervention, forget that. You all don't see the value in that. No. Targeted intervention is discrimination. But only when it is the African community. And then you all wonder why it is. Why it is. Cutters is saying, I keep saying, when they want to talk about Foster Cummings, let them ask Philip Watts, who gets 17 million out of the alleged. Exactly. Exactly. And you're so right, Jenny. Kareem don't have any false papers. All of them who call themselves doctor this and doctor that, and get the degrees, right? And the PhD from a set of mills, degree mills, unaccredited, but calling themselves and they're political analysts and all kind of foolishness. But anyway, we know, right? The PNM, we understand, we made mistakes. And the problem with the PNM is too often times because we feel that we need to be held to the higher standard, and therefore the UNC made it seem as if the PNM doing stuff to help the African community was a bad thing, that it was wrong. The last administration set aside, I think it was $20 million to give out 1,000 grants of $20,000, again, to persons with entrepreneurial aspirations. The intent was to create 1,000 entrepreneurs, and then it bump up to 1,500, and then they say we're going for 2,500 to create business owners. That was the focus of the last administration. Instead of creating jobs, as Kamala wants to do, to create 55,000 jobs, the PNM wanted to create business owners. Let them open a business, and then they could hire their friends, their family, whoever it is, and let them see what is possible. Let them be role models so that those coming after could also decide that they want to start a business too. Instead of looking for work and sending out resumes and getting jobs for which they are overqualified and frustrated. Let us help them to start their own business. That was the focus of the last administration, with all those programs in the Ministry of Youth Development and National Service. Let us give them skills that they could turn into entrepreneurship. I personally know somebody who graduated from the HOIST program, which was the program to do with training these young people to operate cranes. One person I know who was able to get a job abroad in the United States because of what he learned in that program. Had it not been for that program, who knows, he might have been on the corner, or he might have been in a coffin today. But he took advantage of that opportunity, and today he's in the US, making us dollars, honing his skills, and who knows, the sky is the limit for him, literally and otherwise, in that one program. How many others it have like that who we don't know about, who probably benefited in the same way? What we do know is that that program no longer exists. And there is a growing market for that particular skill. But the UNC figure, kickball, everything is football and football and football and football. That's all. That's all you could offer the African community. Go into these communities and you have a football competition, a football league, right? Then you get them some small money, a little $100,000 to share amongst whoever and whoever, and they kick ball every 6 months or whatever, and that's all. Because that's all the African community could do, kickball. Nothing else. When we see the systemic challenges that they face, we heard in UE the difficulties that persons of African descent encounter to get into medical school. All of these things, what are we doing to treat with that? What if the PNM decided to intervene and say, oh, it's a problem? Yeah, they just want to look. Folks, thank you all so much. Jimmy is saying all the marginal seats who gave the UNC this kind of power, all are wicked for spite. How are you going now under this government? Good yellow is the code still. Let me look to run away. There's just one thing I wanted to touch on quickly. So I saw one of these UNC pages on Facebook trying to make me out to be a racist. So, in one of my lives I did recently where I spoke about Fitzgerald Hines referencing the UNC as a murky lagoon, and said, you know, the supporters of when he you remember he talked about the alligators in the murky lagoon. Somehow they decided to turn that into me making a racist statement. How the hell a murky lagoon is racist is beyond me. I am confused, right? I am very confused. But see, as I said, they don't pelt big stone at bare mango trees, right? So if they clearly, but that's the best you all have to try and make me out to be a racist, or I need to come better than that. Okay? Come better than that. Because I am anything but. I don't have a racial bone in my body. I have many friends who have East Indian descent. I have 1% friends. I have friends of all different ethnicities. Because when I see, I don't see race. So if you all want to try and put a spin on that, to say that me saying that, agreeing with Fitzgerald Hines when he said, and I explained the context in which I said that, because you all are hypocrites, you all are dishonest, right? Because the things that you would never have put up with under the PNM, that today you have the patience of Job for and defending. I mean, how else would you describe it? How else would you describe it? So when in the US with Donald Trump, when they were talking about draining the swamp, when they said Trump will come in and drain the swamp, was that racist? Who was it targeted towards? Come on. Did Kareem Marcel got HTC house at the expense of qualified people who have been waiting for years? Are you asking for a friend? Which friend? Which friend? The Jayanti Lakshmi Diyal. Remember play all your games since all you like to go down. Well, the Jayanti Lakshmi Diyal, I'll ask you the same question. Did she get an HTC house at the expense of qualified people who have been waiting for years on the list? Answer that for me now, Winston. Which she later sold. Because at least Kareem living in his house. And when Kareem got his HTC house, guess what? His name was on he applied for an HTC house as well. And he was living in the Betham. Yes, living on the Betham. Okay? He didn't have money like Jayanti had. And whereas she admittedly would have sold the HTC house that she got, Kareem is in the process of outfitting his house so that he could live in it. He could live in it. And aside from the fact that he's a supporter and a member of the PNM, does that disqualify him from getting an HTC house? I'm just asking the question. Because as you know, ministers do have, the Minister of Housing does have the latitude, regardless of which party you belong to be able to treat with certain situations. Right? So if you want to ask about Kareem, tell me about Jayanti. How did she get that HTC house? Tell me about the son of the former mayor of Chaguanas, when Rudal Munilal was the Minister of Housing, and he admitted on a platform in 2015 when he was challenging Kamla Persad-Bissessar for the leadership of the UNC, that the UNC people were saying he never did anything for them and he didn't give them no house. And he admitted that he gave a house to the former mayor, the then mayor of Chaguanas, UNC mayor, gave his son a house and told them, don't come up on the stage for the keys you'll get afterwards. And I know who the mayor was at that time. And that particular mayor, every time I saw him, he was driving a Mercedes-Benz, which tells me he had money. I am pretty sure Kareem Marcel's mother ain't have no Mercedes-Benz, and she don't have Mercedes money. And if you know her history and you know their history and the poverty that they came from, all right, Kareem was deserving of that. So miss me with that nonsense. Can't say the same for Jayanti, all right? Shucks. Anyway, if I go to stay to continue to respond to these guys, I'll be here for the rest of the evening. I'll miss my event. So, God's willing, next week Sunday, folks, I was able to get my schedule changed up a little bit. So, next Sunday I should have the free time again to be able to come on. So Kareem Marcel jumped the line at the expense of TNC citizens who have been waiting before. All right, so let me tell you something, Winston. Because your name is on the HDC, because you applied for an HDC house, all right? Because you applied for an HDC house does not necessarily mean you would qualify for it. You don't just put on your name and you apply, and then they say, yeah, we given this, so we pull some names and we give the person a house. Because that application is the first step. You need to be able to pay for the house. So not everybody who is on the HDC's application list will qualify. Because I have had people who've come to me in my capacity as MP to tell me they applied for how many years and they're looking for to get a house and they want assistance. And then when I ask them, so what do you do? What is your occupation? What is your monthly income? And when they tell me their monthly income, there is absolutely no way they would be able to qualify for an HDC house and what the current income is. So you need to look beyond that. So this nonsense about people who have been waiting before and so on. Because I am certain, because I notice you're not answering me with respect to Jayanti Lakshmi-Dayal. Because if you want to criticize Kareem, right, and the process by which Kareem got his house, let us talk about Jayanti. Because I am pretty sure Jayanti's background is not the same as Kareem. I am pretty sure that she had more money when she got that house than Kareem had. But you all want to target Kareem. He ain't getting, they cut corners for him to get into UE and he get an HDC. So what? You think he was the first person that a government decided, okay, the minister has latitude, the minister has discretion. So there is the regular process, but the minister has a quota that is allocated to them that they could give a house to persons. In every government, it exists. And in the same way Monilal was able to give the former mayor's son, who probably didn't need it, it's the same way. All right? And I make the point again. Kareem's financial circumstance spoke to that. He had a job. Okay? He was a young attorney. What is the issue? What is the issue? Well, it's just on foolishness and nonsense. With Kareem, they jumped the line and people was waiting. You know how long Kareem applied for a house? You know how long? Come on. As Jimmy says, this is what UNC does. That's why Winston could ask that question. And he wouldn't answer about Jayanti. No, tell us about that. Because I am sure there were a lot of people, I could tell you in my own constituency of Malaba Mausika, formerly Davide Omera, in 2013 when I contested the local government election, when I was under the ILP at that time. And there were persons who were part of my campaign who had worked with Anil Roberts and jumped ship. One man, I've spoken about him before, he got 2 units in Belbird. 2. Had no money. Every day he come into work in my campaign with me because he knew the area. He was one of the persons who worked with Anil Roberts and when they were going on their walkabout and so on. So he would organize the walks. And he came with me, and we going here today, and we going there. And at the end of every walk, boss, you could give me a 20, or I just want to buy a little something, I want to buy something to eat. Or you want a $20 because you want to buy some punching. Half the slippers on his foot eaten away. That's all he had. Every day he wearing the same old clothes, but he get 2 units in Belbird. Explain that to me now, Winston. Explain that to me. How the hell he was paying the rent or paying the mortgage, but every afternoon you want $20 to buy a nip? How he get that? And there are plenty. We are going to Belbird now, and the majority of people who are inside there support the UNC. Why? Because the UNC gave all of them houses, gave all of them units. How do you think they got it? They didn't skip the line. No. They went through the regular process, right? And their names just came up. Coincidentally. Missed me with that bullshit. Folks, we'll chat again next week, Sunday. God's willing. Enjoy the rest of your Sunday, enjoy the rest of your weekend, and have a productive week. All right? Take care.